folks, let's go ahead and dive in. I've got 12 o'clock. Welcome everybody to this workshop for the Temple City Council on November 2nd, 2023. First item is public comments. We don't have any. We'll move on. Second item, before we just jump straight into the training, is do we, council or staff, is there anything that we need to discuss about tonight's regular meeting at 5 o'clock?
I have a couple items brief.
Okay.
You want to do that now?
Yes,
Oh, okay, let me get organized, sorry. Item Q under miscellaneous, related to Barnhart, just we're on target.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
And we did just receive a PUA for another parcel, so that's one that we won't need to go through condemnation on, so we're.
Oh, you mean related to one of these on here?
Yes, for Barnhart.
Oh, for Barnhart. Okay, good.
you off the top of your head, how many are left?
There are a total of 6, so 5.
Today.
And we've gotten notification that the other, so that's the Sioux Falls Prater property, that we received a PUA, or it's in the works, they've agreed to the PUA. The landscaping company, just on the other side
Right.
across from them, they have hired an attorney, which sometimes helps the process move and sometimes hinders the process. And Mr. Turner next to him has been in conversations with our right-of-way agent. And then at the other end, Ms. Capon has an attorney who has been in conversation also with our right-of-way agent. So,
But we're feeling fairly comfortable.
well, I mean, we will acquire the property that we need to acquire. It's just
Okay.
a matter of the timeline.
Well, that's sort of what I'm referring to.
Yeah, and it just depends. If we end up having to go through the full condemnation, it'll take until maybe at the latest February timeframe. And that's why we have the plan to work heavy on one end or the other. And in that way, if we don't have all of the parcels, we can start at one end.
Oh, okay.
And to continue working to acquire the others and just.
Okay, I'm sure that we have a plan. I'm just going to have another plan,
Yeah.
but that's fine.
We're
Okay, good.
also, at the next meeting, we're also going to bring forward an interlocal agreement with TISD.
Okay.
For them to, do the road as a change order to their contract for the school with, McLeod Construction. And that will allow the project to be expedited as well. So we'll still pay for
Okay.
that portion, but it'll avoid the bidding timeframe and will
Excellent.
increase the coordination between the on-site work and the off-site work. And TASD has agreed to that. Actually, Kathy is just finalizing that. So
Oh, okay.
that will also help us to hopefully be able to deliver everything before the school opens. And if not before the school opens, it'll just be a few weeks. And we have worked on contingency plan with the school district. And
Okay.
if it's a few weeks, it's not a huge deal. We have our fingers crossed that it's actually before the school open, but at most, it'll just be a few weeks.
Okay, well, I saw Kent last night and dodged him, but he was smiling.
It's fine, things are good.
I think he's smiling.
It's like a
But
dog.
I
If you're
still
wagging,
dodge
if you're
it.
wagging their tail, right, you can pet them. So go ahead and, if he's smiling.
Brandon, do you know if there's any utilities on that part?
There is, I believe so, yes.
So other than that,
Okay, then there's probably, probably abstain from that item.
So we want to pull Q? We need to do that now? We don't need to do that now.
Did you want to
Hello?
do it or did you just?
Me?
want to-
Oh, me or Mike?
Mine didn't
Oh,
say
for-
the thing.
Oh,
This,
no, no,
that's
sorry.
down the road. Yeah, yeah,
That's for the item.
yeah, okay.
No, I don't, I just wanted to be sure that I don't have to keep dodging.
No, I think I no need to dodge and.
Okay,
But that's,
great.
none of that's on here. This.
No.
No, it'll be
no,
on the
no.
next agenda.
Thank you very much.
And I think Mayor doesn't like when I say this, but that was his idea. So. everyone
Well,
should-
I knew the mayor had an idea. I'd heard rumors of an idea, but I didn't know what the
If
idea
it
was.
wasn't for me, that school would not even be built.
Change the
I know, I know.
name.
Exactly.
Oh, you can't know that the next time I don't dodge you.
And the crowd profit.
That's
No,
right.
I.
All right, anything else?
You had a good idea. Congratulations.
I opened the door is all I did.
First time, it's an excellent event.
Public Works thing is huge.
Good.
James.
Terry Cloud should be the one thanking me.
You're gonna get the Mayor of the Year award.
Yeah.
Mayor, I do just have two notes.
Okay.
On item 4, I believe we have that on the agenda primarily for voting purposes, unless you all desire a presentation, it's for extension.
Yes,
And then we had a brief conversation. Are we prepared to move forward with item 5?
I will know shortly.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I'm
We may-
working on it.
They asked for that to be tabled
Maybe, maybe
then.
not.
Okay, very good.
I don't think so.
Okay,
We'll
So
see.
on 4, did you want the presentation or just?
I'm very aware of it. I do not need credit.
Okay. Just making sure.
No, pretty simple. I don't think presentations.
I'll tell Kyle. he can do
Yeah, I'll make him say for that. Okay, very good. Anything else? Although we're starting at noon, the meeting should be over pretty quickly now. We ought to be out by 5:30 or so. All right. Okay. Anything else? Staff, council, nothing? Everybody good? All right. All right, we will now jump back to item 1, which is conduct Texas Public Officials Emergency Management Training. We're all so excited.
I know you were very excited and I appreciate it, but I did get lunch. So actually, if we want to, before I get started, take a break, it's turkey, the end is ham, and I forgot what she told me was in the meal.
Okay. That's all
So
right.
it's from Jimmy John's, it's Vito. I apologize. I need to look that up real quick.
What does
So,
veto mean?
there are, I don't know.
Veto, oh.
I'm about to look that up.
Veggie
tofu.
vegetarian.
Veggie tofu.
I hope you got one of them.
Very serious.
So, veggie thing. So if you want meat, go to either end of the boxes. So if y'all would like to go ahead and. I don't have that.
Okay.
Maybe spell it, Fran.
You said it before.
That's what my dad always told me. Just say it like you know what you're talking about.
Say it loud.
Italian. It's Italian, sorry.
It's a what?
Well, that
Veggie
is
tofu.
Italian.
Yeah, there you go.
We've rethink
All right, very good. Let's eat and get back pretty quick. I hear it's 3 hours.
We will not take the full 3 hours.
Okay, very good. Thanks. So,
You have
Oh.
a closed session.
What y'all get.
Happy? Yeah, I'm not moving
It's not hard
now that I.
Well, and I told him.
There's nothing that totally left. Like, I can avoid the tofu.
It's all of you guys.
Yeah,
there's
something.
Yeah, I'm not.
And that's the-
I've already been.
Okay.
So,
You
I'm
got
sorry.
your pass.
I know, thank you.
Kathy's
Feeling
not,
hard that
not eating, so it's not very good. I don't even know what that is. Then.
So-
I know.
I don't do it.
But we're gonna have-
Yes, 100%. You are, you know, with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for lunch.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate y'all being here.
We don't think you know it's.
No, it is not. It's like no, ma'am.
Oh, that thing is colder. It's great.
You know, I'm not sure. That's just.
Why, we're bugging you with questions?
It's kind of like Starbucks with their sizes. They're not small, medium, and large. They're all different.
Crazy from day one. At Starbucks, I was the first one in Washington. And I got-
What you get.
I don't, and I still don't.
Like, what does that mean?
Exactly. Am I gonna write it down and carry it around?
Whatever your notes in your pocket.
I don't know, maybe on the side or fan.
Bam. I wanted to come and wanted to get out.
So we're not beautiful yesterday.
Yeah.
They did such a nice job. Really nice. I want to get party underneath that.
I am gonna pass around, we have to do a sign-in sheet. That is how I make sure y'all get your certificate, and then I don't book you any stuff. I will frame yours.
Yeah, the night with everybody else.
You are waving that around though.
I know. Well, I got Homeland Security here, they'll take care of
Well, I don't know.
Second time I've ever had.
it. Good, how are you? Anybody else want? This is my thing to learn. Thank you. Yeah. That's what it was, I did.
I haven't been here.
All gone through. I don't know. I didn't, you know, I don't live there, but I saw it, online. That'd be nice. There were someone directing.
I did that way home last night from the airport. I took the little shortcut on Market Loop. And the traffic was backed up almost to the loop. Not to get on 31st Street, but to turn in to Long John Silver. Like I had to drive in through them. I'm not waiting for 50 car deep to get into Long John Silver. Hey, go later.
I definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
Come on, who beat that Long John Silver anyway?
Well, I really didn't think they would rebuild.
Running guns.
Still the same menu.
No, I don't need it, Long John Silver.
We were in high school, we were talking about lunch. And people would always walk. We were freshmen who couldn't get in our cars.
Right.
So everything had like a goat path to Wendy's or to, used to be, with the gravy from there where Chick-fil-A.
My jam.
But people were always at Long John, but that's what I kind of associated with.
We're all delicate.
They finally widened it up and closed it off.
All right, so while y'all are eating, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I do have a couple of folks here with me that are we're co-presenting. So of course, everybody knows the famous Chief Randall. He is hiding over here in the corner, yes. Well, I was called infamous in the meeting. That made me nervous.
Famous or infamous?
I don't know. I didn't answer any questions. And then we've got David Shaw here. He is our district coordinator with the Texas Division of Emergency Management. So, and then Martin Whitfield is district coordinator for the Waco region. I don't know the new numbers yet.
So the numbers are the same, the names have changed, but now they've changed our title, same shirt, so to speak, same job. So now we're district chiefs. We're not district
Okay,
coordinators
so-
anymore, so that's a new thing,
That's
right?
done.
District numbers remain the same.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in the.
Yes, that is actually part of the presentation. So I'll apparently get a little education on that as well. That's very, very new change.
Very
So Martin is out of the Waco area, so they work very closely together, and occasionally I reach out to Martin for random things because I worked with him years ago when it was all one region
One
before they split it. And then John, we have is a county liaison officer. Okay, out of Milam County, so he is coming to listen into the class as well today. So,
Okay.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
all right, so this is the public officials workshop. I know it says 3 hours. We're not gonna take the full 3 hours. We're gonna accomplish what we need to accomplish and call it good when we're done. So obviously this is just administrative things that if you need to take a phone call, obviously please feel free. There's no issues with that. Okay, we're not gonna do. Okay, so we're gonna cover a variety of topics. We'll kind of tag team and go over some different things. We want you to have a basic understanding of what is emergency management, what are some laws, statutes, executive orders that govern emergency management, what does it look like at the local level versus state, declaring a disaster, what are some assets, so variety of topics that we are going to cover today. With that being said, we will dive into the basics of emergency management. So there is actually a difference between an emergency and a disaster. Was anybody aware of that before I made that statement? They get used interchangeably quite often. So an emergency, and I am not going to read slides to y'all. I trust that y'all can cover that, but it's basically if there's an imminent threat to life, to property, it is something that is a big deal, but it's not a huge deal. So it's less of on a scale than a disaster. There is threat maybe from a wildfire, maybe from we had the snowstorm in February. That was an emergency. Disaster is when there is widespread severe damage, a lot of loss of life, a lot of damage to property. So we actually ended up in the disaster realm when we got more ice than anybody anticipated with all of the down tree limbs. That blocked our main arteries in the city, caused a lot of damage with power lines. So that it actually transitioned into a disaster at that point in time. So that's semantic sometimes, but those are, if you hear emergency, it is basically a smaller scale than a disaster. We talk about the life cycle a lot of emergency management. There are a lot of phases that that we are constantly working our way through. So prevention and mitigation kind of go hand in hand. It's whether you're on the front end of the incident or on the back end. Prevention leads into preparedness. What are you doing to prepare for what is coming? Obviously, response is just that. It's responding to what has occurred, and then recovery is where you get into that cleanup effort, getting back to your state of normal. And then mitigation is, well, we've identified some things that we can lessen the damage next time or lessen the problems that we run into for the next incident. Prevention is, we really want to make sure we're engaging our partners. We do work with a lot of partners here locally. We have partnerships with Salvation Army, with Impact Church, for example. Recently reached out to them. Hey, are y'all doing your warming shelters? Are you doing warming centers because of the cold? What's going on with that? So we do have prevention partnerships that we do work through that lead us into preparedness. So that is activities that we're not trying to prevent a disaster. We're trying to lessen the damage from it. Plans on how to save lives, minimize the damage, enhancing our response. We want to make sure that we have the best response possible, whether that's speeding up our response, being more organized in our response, making sure we have the correct resources. Those are all preparedness activities. And it is never ending in our preparedness cycle. So we make a plan, we work on organizing, we equip, whether that is actual tangible resources or in the training aspect, we do training classes like this, or we do exercises, which we'll talk a little bit about some of the exercises we've done here locally. And then I would argue that not just exercise, but real incident also is in this situation. So if we have a real incident, we go back to the drawing board afterwards. What were our lessons learned? How can we better improve to be prepared for the next round? While every incident is not created equal, they're not exactly the same. You can have two incidents that are fairly similar. So we are 3 for 3 on ice storms in February. We had snowpocalypse in 21. We had one in 22 that really wasn't that big of a deal. And then this year we had, I think I jokingly called it Branchageddon not too long ago. We just had an insane amount of tree limbs come down, whether on power lines or roads or whatever. So I'm looking at that going, hey, that's 3 years in a row. So we should probably plan on having another ice storm early February timeframe. And I remember because it's always close to Bell County Youth Fair time. My girls are involved in that, so it's kind of that like, get ready, it's coming. But we have either an exercise or we have a real incident, and then we go back and we plan again. Now, whether that's we make changes, we tweak the process inside the plan, whatever that looks like, but we just keep going through that cycle.
What is happening with that horse?
I don't know, I was going to be levitating.
Oh, which picture are we looking at? That is the large animal rescue class. So there's a class that AgriLife puts on about rescuing large animals. It looks questionable, I'm not gonna lie.
The rescues of those counties.
What about rescuing a yak?
I've seen that done with a real horse that was in a ditch, a deep ditch.
It's pretty impressive.
It was very impressive, and the horse, I learned later on that the horse was okay.
Good. All right, so then obviously our response activities, that is once something has occurred and we are responding to it, that we are activating our resources and deploying them, whether that's people, whether that's tangible assets, supplies. Our goal is to protect lives, protect property, trying to get into recovery as quickly as possible. Now, mind you, when we start response, we should also be thinking about recovery, because you want this to end, whatever it is that has occurred. You want it to end. You want to get to that stage of recovery, because that is how you get back to normal. And we understand the value of getting kids back in school, getting folks back at their job, opening up businesses so that we can keep the tax base there and not have those damaging long-term impacts. When you have jurisdictions that have very significant disasters, if you think like Harvey, a lot of those coastal communities, it took them a long time to get back to normal, and their jurisdictions suffered greatly because people were not at work. They were sheltered somewhere else because they didn't have a home to live in. So it's kind of a domino effect. So we want to stabilize the situation. We want to make sure the infrastructure is in place, and then we want to try to get folks back to their normal routines as quickly as possible. There's also a lot of research about, when you talk about kids, trying to keep them in their normal routine as much as possible. So even if you have them in a shelter trying to do some type of schooling and everything, it actually is better for their mental health in the long run. So, and then of course, once we have something occur, mitigation, what does that look like? How can we lessen the impact for the next one? So if we have issues with wildfires in certain areas because we have overgrown brush, or we're concerned about it, we actually did a mitigation effort that was pre-incident for our fireworks show. We went out to the area, went out to Crossroads, and we went, you know what, this over here, this looks questionable. This is pretty grown up. Let's go ahead and do a control burn. Get that mitigation underway, and so that way, if it does catch, it's not going anywhere. So that was actually something that we did for the first time this year, and it worked great. So we plan to implement that every year and do a control burn every year leading up to that. That is a good example of a mitigation effort, because if we start a wildfire out there, especially with all of those homes now, and we've got a bunch of people out there, that could very different.
Not to mention bad credit, but the city set the place on fire.
You know that too. My goal is to keep us out of negative news. So all of that being said it is a system that is continually working through those different stages of the life cycle. But it's not just me, it's not just chief, it's not even just the first responders. We really need to have the whole community involved. And so when we start having meetings for like, for example, we were actually in Waco last week. TxDOT called a meeting for winter weather preparedness. That was a whole community type approach to, we've got winter weather potentially coming. How are we going to respond? Who's going to do what? What does the communication look like? And have some of those things in place. That's working through that emergency management cycle and working with our partners.
No, ma'am. Only when you tell me I need to speak, I'll speak.
Oh.
Okay.
So any questions just about the basics of emergency management? All right. Fun topic here, laws, statutes, and executive orders. This is how we have the authority to do the things that we do and the decisions that we make. So this is the big one, the Stafford Act, so Robert T. Stafford Act. This is what gives the president the authority to declare a disaster, emergency or disaster, with the state, the governor requesting the disaster declaration. This is what gives the president the authority to do that. It also, very importantly, makes the federal assets available to us. So if we as a state get to a point, and we'll talk about thresholds in a little bit, if we are able to declare a disaster, that opens up the opportunity for federal resources to come in and provide assistance to us. It works the same for the local level. If we declare a disaster in the county, it does not go to the granular level of cities, but if we can declare in the county, then the state resources are a little bit more available to us. The Homeland Security Presidential Directive 5. It's a very long title. What's that mean? Let me go back. So this is basically guidance on how the nation responds to all hazard incidents. So we've had a lot of focus on certain types of incidents in the past. Wildfires are included in this, but all hazards is the approach that we have taken because we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into just dealing with one certain risk. We want to make sure that we are prepared for anything that could happen. If that's a weather related issue, if that's a man-made issue, if it's a cyber attack, that's one of the newest things that we've kind of added to our things we're trying to prepare for. Cyber attacks, that's a whole different animal. But that's that all hazards approach. Aligning roles, making sure that we are speaking the same language, similar terminology. So we'll talk about NIMS in a little bit. It's not meant to add red tape to the process, but it's meant to help try to clean up and define who's doing what, who's responsible for what paperwork or what requests, and how all that should flow. Government Code 418. This is what gives the mayor his authority to declare disaster here locally. Also, you could evacuate if you wanted to, if you so deemed that necessary. If we have something going on and Mayor Davis feels like we need to evacuate a certain part of the city, he has the authority to do so under Chapter 418. If we were to have a tornado come through and we have kind of a mass exodus of people we're sheltering, maybe in Belton or Harper, whatever, we could limit the egress of people in the area until we get it cleaned up and safe for them to come in. Or go manage the area. One thing that is stressed all of the time, I would say, is that we have to utilize our resources first. So we have the ability to make requests for resources, but we are required to exhaust our local resources here first. And when I say that, I don't just mean City of Temple, I mean also mutual aid. So an example, we have a generator at Wilson Rec Center. If we say, hey, we need to open a shelter, but we really just don't want to use Wilson Rec, we want to use Vista. who we've partnered with before. They've done sheltering operations for us before, but said we want to use Vista. Well, we need a generator for them because we've been dealing with some uncertainty with the grid. If we put in a request for a generator, David fully should say, Jennifer, I'm not going to approve this because I know you have one at Wilson Rec. You need to use that first. We've got to utilize that local resource first. Now, if we have something big enough that we need multiple shelters and we have issues still with the grid and we need another generator, but we're utilizing what we've got, then I can go and make that request for, we need a generator for this location and here's why. The state is willing to help. We basically have to justify why we're making the request. The mayor is the emergency management director for the city of Temple. For the county, it is the judge. So depending on your municipality, that's who is responsible for those. For Temple, we have filled out the TDM 147 as a form that the mayor has appointed me as the emergency management coordinator. So that basically, I manage the program for him. It does not remove the responsibility from him. It just means that I am managing the program and am assisting him. If we have any changes in our elected officials, then we need to make sure that we fill out a new one. This is the form that I bug him every December. Hey, can you sign this for me? We've got to update it. And then I can't remember, I think it's another page, but I'll go ahead and cover it here. So if we do have any changes, so when mayor came into office, election was that, I believe it was May. Well, then we will need to do another 147 in the middle of the year. So that year we did one for the beginning of the year for the mayor that was in place at that time. He came into office, we just update that information. And it basically, the main things on there are who is your emergency management director and how can he be contacted, he or she be contacted? Have they appointed someone for the coordinator position and who is that? We also, since I was hired on as the EMC, that actually transitioned chief to the assistant EMC. So he is listed on that sheet as well. We've got both of those listed out. So that way, if I am out of pocket for whatever reason, they have his contact information.
Right? You're her assistant.
Exactly.
It's an interesting dynamic. My boss is my assistant.
I like it.
Take advantage. We roll with it.
I got the same instruction is I'll point you when I need to speak today. So
Oh, goodness. Okay, so 421. This just requires the governor to identify strategies to deter threats from the homeland. So politics and opinions aside, but this is why the governor is looking at border security and the wall and some of those things. It is under this chapter that he is exercising those authorities. So if there's a threat identified, it's response to and recovering from those emergencies. And then it also provides activities. So that basically there's councils and committees that have been created to help guide the governor to provide information to him, but also to work on specific areas. So you can see the list there. The governor's interoperable radio communications program, that one always cracks me up. I feel like that's the song and that never ends. We have been working on radio communications forever, it feels like, and it continues to be a problem. It's a very expensive endeavor. So for example, we have 800 megahertz system here in Bell County. All of our first responders are on the same radios. Have the ability to access the same channels as long as they're programmed into their radio. If we go over to Milam County, so they had a train derailment last year before,
Every few months.
fairly frequently. So they had a pretty significant train derailment. Well, our hazmat team was requested to go over there. They're not on the 800 system. They're on a different system. Thankfully, we have a communication center that can basically bridge the gap between those channels and patch them so that they can communicate. But it's not that way across the state. There are still pockets that there's still challenges.
That patch allows direct communication.
So they basically say, what channel are you on? I'm going to plug that in here. And what channel are you on? I'll plug that in here. And then they can
And Jennifer, we've also got the multi-band radios as well, so.
Okay, yes, I forgot about that part. So we actually, a few years ago, got where we can switch over to Milam County. I'm gonna go back to that example. They have VHF radios, so we can switch over to utilizing VHF cameras.
Was that fire and police program?
I just fire right now.
Oh, wait,
Oh, yes, ma'am.
what is the Texas Fusion Center Policy Council?
So Texas Fusion Centers are law enforcement driven locations. They are they help weed through information, looking for threats and things like that. Like we have a fusion center down in Austin. I think the Joint Terrorism Task Force is there and some others. So it's just policies on how that's handled.
How does the word fusion, what does that mean?
Putting them together, I guess,
Okay.
the different law, because there's so many different law enforcement agencies,
Okay, so
getting them all on the same page.
I get it.
No, Asian fusion, that's mix.
All right, so this is Executive Order 32, RP 32. So it was from Rick Perry. This is appointing a director for the Homeland Security Office in Texas. This is what the disaster districts were created out of. The words, they're not coming. This is an older slide, and David will talk about some of these changes because we don't do the disaster district chairperson for highway patrol anymore. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So we'll just keep on going. So Executive Order GA 05 talks about the Emergency Management Council. So it is a council of, I think they're up to 39 entities that are involved now. The chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, or TDIM, Nimkid is currently who's in that position. It basically identifies him as the chair and gives him the authority to act on behalf of the governor with council approval, talking about administration and supervision of the act, and issuing directives. So this is talking about the political subdivision. Oh, I already talked about that's the 147 making changes to it. So within 30 days of any changes, then we would notify them. That's kind of a weird spot. So talking about the council a little bit more, they advise the governor, talk about resources. There are 39 of the Red Cross Salvation Army kind of fit into a couple of different buckets. They may not all activate. So that's that partial versus full activation for the State Operations Center. Depends on what the incident is if they're needed. There are 3 slides listing of all of the agencies. So I'm not gonna go through and read them, but just some highlights. I mentioned Red Cross, TCEQ, Animal Health Commission. You'll notice that Texas A&M, there are other universities that are in there as well. General Land Office, TEA, Texas Tech. So it's, like I said, 39 agencies are involved in that council. After Hurricane Harvey, which occurred in 2017, there was a report that came out, part of the after action review called the Eye of the Storm. This was a report that listed out 44 recommendations for Texas Emergency Management on how best to integrate, make some changes, working through that emergency management process, the mitigation, preparedness planning, all of that. Just recommendations on how to be better. Is probably the simplest way to put that. There are some things that have been accomplished in that, things that are in progress. 44 recommendations, some of them were pretty hefty, and so they'll take some time to accomplish, but it's a 178-page report. So if you have any desire for some light reading, I'd be happy to send that to you. So when the state starts talking about their response, there are emergency support functions. So there's a total of 16 of them. They're basically grouped by categories, if you want to think of it that way. So we've got like firefighting as a category, mass care, public information. This is how, like when we do all of our state reports, updates on what's going on in a response, they are grouping the responses based off of these support functions. One of the things that I am working towards in our local emergency management plan is getting our annexes into support functions so that we mirror this. So it's a lot cleaner and we're kind of all on the same page when we start talking about, ESF 12 is energy or ESF 16 is recovery. Well, right now in our annexes, recovery is in every annex. It talks about responsibilities and what we're doing. So it's messy. So when I get a planner, I will be able to make those changes. But basically we'll talk about the emergency management plan in a little bit. Executive order RP 40, again, under Rick Perry, sets up NIMS. So when I emailed this out, I was talking about being NIMS compliant. So this is the National Incident Management System. So this is a class that elected officials and appointees need to take for us to be NIMS compliant. We did I've lost the word. In 2005, we adopted a resolution. Sorry, it's a little slow there. We adopted a resolution in 2005 that City of Temple would be NIMS compliant. And so this is a step in the process of pursuing NIMS compliance. There's a chart here in a little bit that Chief and I have been working on establishing on who needs what training and, what level of that, because it's a little muddy.
You mean within staff?
Within the City of Temple staff, yes, ma'am. I will say that we do a really good job on the first responder world of doing these classes, but that's kind of the extent of it. I've been roping in slowly but surely some other folks. So,
She shames us into compliance.
what I've got. So NIMS is a way to make sure that we are working together, we're speaking the same language, we have the same roles and responsibilities. Really before 2004, there was nothing in place. So this was a huge problem in 9/11 and the response to the towers. There were so many agencies involved. And they spent so much time going, who's doing what? What are you saying? I don't understand. If you have to stop and have a conversation about who's doing what and what page are you on, and I don't understand your what position and you report to who, you're wasting time responding. You could be out saving lives, you could be out protecting property, but instead we're bogged down in the minutia of what do you mean? So this was just basically a way to get us all on the same page, speaking the same language, understanding if we have a public information officer, what is that person responsible to do? What is in their swim lane of responsibilities? That is basically what I just said. So it's just a framework. It is meant to be flexible. I joke that we don't have incident command purist. We want it to be functional, and so we do make some adjustments, but working within the framework of what is there. So this is that chart that I told you that Chief and I have been working on. So as you can see, so all staff, we want to complete IS 102 or 100 and 700. Those are very basic information classes and they're online, so they can be taken at their own pace. The reason we put all staff is, I'll use COVID as an example. We pulled people to do jobs that they don't have in their job description at all. We had call centers, we had people doing paperwork for vaccine sites. There were a lot of shifting of folks. And so that's why we just grouped all staff for those. Key and selected staff, we want them to have a little bit more training to do the 800 and the 200. Those are both also online. Then you can see division heads, department heads have some more responsibilities. I will say police, fire, public works, PIO, and parks are the ones that are required to have the most training, which we pretty much have that covered at this point, with the exception of parks. I've not talked to Kevin just yet, but the other departments have at least a few people that have gone through those trainings. All right, any questions on laws? Okay. We're just breathing right through. So local responsibility. Excuse me. Is it okay that I'm loitering up here?
Let me get my stuff out of here.
Trying to figure out where to stand. So they always say. So they always say that disasters start local and end local. And what that means is this is our community. These are our people. They are our responsibility. So we are responsible for doing our planning, doing our drills, our exercises, our plan. All of that relies on us here locally. That's not to say that we can't get assistance, but it is our responsibility. So our plan, so I've mentioned this a couple of times, we have an emergency operations plan. It's basically structured, there's the basic plan, and then there's a lot of annexes that follow, that cover a variety of topics. So the basic plan is very simplistic, talks about the structure of how we're gonna do things in general. It's meant to be applicable to everything as best as possible. Obviously, I think Mike Tyson said it, a good plan is only a good plan until you get punched in the mouth. So we do the best we can with the plan, but we also understand that it is a piece of paper and we may need to shelve it and come back to it. But that is why our process is continuous. We want to go back to it and what in this is not working? What do we need to change? I do make sure for the annexes that I include department heads in the appropriately. So as a matter of fact, I just talked to law enforcement recently. There's an annex coming up that is solidly in their wheelhouse. And so they're going to look over it first, make the proposed changes, and we'll go from there. The whole community piece is a little trickier. And to be honest, we have not been doing well, but that is something that I am trying to get my arms around. So we do have a couple of annexes that mention Salvation Army and Red Cross, and so that's easy enough to send to them. But beyond that, we really don't have that involvement just yet. But that's on the working on list. They need to be reviewed every 5 years. Any significant changes, if we have something that occurs, and like I said, if we have evacuation occur and we go, that plan was terrible, it did not work, we need to start over, we can go back to it at that point in time. We don't have to wait for that 5 years. We can review it anytime. It's meant to be a live document. So our plan is just for City of Temple. We don't cover anybody else. The county plan does cover some other municipalities. They cover, I think, all of the small municipalities. I'm not sure if they officially did it this year or not, but there was talks about them covering Belton, and that just basically means that they share a plan. And so they have to work to make sure that their plan covers all of those entities. If we wanted to at some point in time, like if Morgan's Point or somebody came up to us and said, hey, we want to partner and have a joint plan, that is an option. But currently our plan is just our plan, just City of Temple.
Is ours coordinated with the counties or?
So we all operate off of templates that the state created, and then we basically change our details to make it look. So they are very similar. I have not compared them though, to be honest. I did come from the county before here, so I know some of them are fairly similar just because I've worked on the plan there before I left. But that is a good question. So that's something that we probably should do.
Well, also, I mean, should there be some coordination between the cities too?
As far, what the plans say.
So the municipal program covers a single city, but a disaster or an emergency doesn't stop at the city limits, right?
Correct.
So,
Yes, sir.
I mean, I know we have mutual aid agreements and all of those things. I mean, are y'all comfortable that we as a region have a well coordinated plan with each other? Or is the plan seriously just everyone just digs in and does their own thing? They operate their own plan.
In Bell County, we get along very well when it comes to response time. Like we may have bickering on the side.
It's
All of the jurisdictions.
Okay.
So I've been in a couple of different roles in emergency management in Bell County. And so I've had a couple of different viewpoints, and when something happens, everybody comes to the table and what do we need to do and how do we make this happen and how do we work together to make it the best response possible.
But it's nothing-
That being
nothing
said-
too codified or anything like that.
I was gonna say
Which
that
is
being said,
fine.
we don't compare plans necessarily,
Yeah.
but I have a very close working relationship with the Killeen EMC and the county EMC.
Yeah.
The other jurisdictions don't have a designated person, but like for Belton, it's their fire chief, and so we work well with him as well. Same with Harker Heights. And I will say the eclipse that's
Yeah.
coming up in April, that is really pushing us to make sure we're all on the same page and working together. So one of the things, I'll kind of sidestep on this for a minute. One of the things that we are doing in Bell County, because we plan on being completely inundated. We expect to have a ton of people here and not be able to respond like we normally do, not be able to get to people as quickly. We're thinking that especially the rural areas are really going to hurt. So we have divided the county into 3 areas. So we've got kind of the Killeen EOC area. Bell County is covering Belton, Harker Heights, Little River, kind of that more southern and east part. And then Temple is partnering with Moffett, Morgan's Point, and Troy. And so like we've had a meeting, it's probably the first time those municipalities got together. And I said, I'm like, how do we want this to look? How do we want to do this? How do we want to coordinate? Because some of that level of collaboration has not happened on the front end. So, I mean, if nothing else, this eclipse is pushing us to think differently and approach the planning process differently with our partners. Yes, sir.
Oh,
You wanna-
you got down so Mayor, I think by statute, we would have to have our own individual plan unless we signed on to just accept the county plan. And really for jurisdictions our size now, like for a Rogers or a Little River, I think that's fine for them. But for jurisdictions our size, because we do have so many unique challenges in the city with different businesses and topography and those types of things, it's important for us to keep our own individual plan that outlines those things. So again, you can do some combination, but I think once you get to our size or larger, really you need that individualized, personalized plan.
Well, I guess I should
Maybe-
clarify that.
Maybe
I don't want to-
coordination is a better word.
Coordination, that's kind of what
That's
I
kinda what I
was
was asking.
thinking.
That's better
Yeah.
than.
It
And there's
was,
a ton of coordination that goes on.
Yeah.
There are monthly meetings with all the groups.
Mhm. So does the city's particular plan get as granular as down to a specific business?
No.
That might have specific needs based upon.
no, and we don't necessarily want to get that granular.
Okay.
We do want to leave wiggle room in there because this incident today could look very different than the incident in 2 weeks, and we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
So it tries to identify positions and roles and what are the responsibilities of that position in this type of response,
Okay.
and kind of leave it a little bit more generic.
I got it. That makes sense.
Jennifer,
Yes, ma'am.
the mayor and I represent the city at K-Tempo through the Central Texas County, consortium, whatever it's called, Central Texas,
Council of Governments.
the council, that's the Council of Governments.
Okay.
And Mr. Shaw gave a presentation to K-Tempo a month or 2 ago. But we've not done, K-Tempo has done nothing since then that I'm aware of. And that was mainly on preparedness with roads and porta potties and all the issues for the eclipse is what it was surrounded mainly. I don't know that we've had any input. We, the city, has had any input from that. His message to K-Tempo as since then. Are you aware of anything?
I'm not, but I know that the city, PD, fire department, et cetera, I know that they're all working on a plan together.
We actually have a meeting
Local.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it's not, no one's standing flat footed.
No, I didn't
Around
mean to
that.
imply that.
Yeah.
I just know that you scared the pants off of us with.
I didn't mean to, ma'am.
Perfectly acceptable and good, actually, because if it comes about as the worst possible scenario, it will be shortages in grocery stores, traffic jams as everyone leaves because the eclipse, people come before,
Yes, ma'am.
all leave at the same time when it's over.
Yeah, we've talked about it kind of like with the fireworks show. Well, people kind of trickle in, and so it's easy to manage them coming in. But then fireworks show's over, I want to go home.
Exactly,
Everybody tries.
right now.
I just imagine Friday at 3 o'clock on I-35 heading south at Midway.
Yeah.
That's very
Yes.
good. I mean, they're predicting potential of 1 million visitors to this part of Central Texas.
It's amazing.
It is definitely challenging us in a way that I don't think we've been challenged. I feel like this decade, really starting in 2020, we
Yeah.
just like we're just trying to see how well we can stretch our brain. But it has challenged us to think differently about things and how we're going to approach that, how we're going to collaborate, who's going to do what.
It's
Somebody was
actually-
asking me for some answers on something. And I said, this is not like a Christmas parade or weather related incident. This is a very different animal and I don't have the answers. We think we know what's coming and we're ballparking and are planning our response based off of that, but we don't really
But
know.
we won't know that it's a bust until it's a bust based on the weather. And those people will be here because they've planned it. I mean, many of them. It's actually a good opportunity for learning and training
Absolutely.
because planning in advance because we know the eclipse is coming.
Well, and I've been able to coordinate with folks that I've not had an opportunity to establish relationships with, and relationships and emergency management are everything. I couldn't tell you the number of times in my past lives that I've gone, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me with this? I worked in the county EOC. I was over health and medical for Hurricane Harvey. And we had a lady in a shelter in Killeen that had been diagnosed very recently with a very aggressive cancer and needed to start treatment. Well, that's not part of any plan. That's not something you plan for the diabetics and you plan for the physical challenges. If, you have things that you tend to expect. That was not one of them. I had a contact at Baylor Scott and White and I said, hey, can you help me with this? Can we get her into the Killeen Cancer Center? So she was set up with a doctor, set up with treatments and had 2 treatments before she went home. But
Very good.
that was, I knew who to call because of a relationship. So if nothing else, it's been a good practice and we're building better relationships and working on our plans. And so if nothing else, it's still not a loss, even if things don't pan out the way we think they might. So.
Good.
All right, so y'all don't listen to this next part because I'm gonna be honest. Okay, not to worry. So there is a program that the state is pushing out that I'm not completely sold on yet. So it came out in 2020, which of course we all know that year nobody really did anything other than COVID. And I tried to get into it in 21. They have been making improvements and I will get back on that bandwagon soon. I want a little bit more history under it. But it is how we are going to operate or create and update our plan in the future. So it's completely online. It's supposed to be like a plug and play where you put in your details and it creates the plan for you. I'm just not been thrilled with it yet.
I'm right there with you.
Okay.
It'll get there. Just
It will.
we're right there with you. We'll be retired when it gets there, but we'll get there.
So
Yes.
I'm still doing the old school update a PDF and go that route, but there is something coming. There are options for training. I'm not going to bore y'all with that slide. I do want to talk about exercise a little bit because in my opinion, exercises are so vital. It is how we go through and we test our plan, we test our process, we figure out, do we have the right resources? Do we have the right training? What are we missing? So there are 2 types of exercises. There's discussion based, which, seminar can be just an hour, here's on this topic, or workshop can be several hours. And then tabletop exercises, which I'll talk about in just a minute. We've done a couple of those lately. And then operations based, that is where you're actually moving things. You're moving your people. You might be moving some assets. A drill is very focused. You can be working on just one piece of an overall scenario. Functional is where you still have some discussion based. You're simulating some things, but you are actually moving people around. And then full scale is you're essentially pretending it's the real deal. You are responding like you would normally. You've got if you've ever seen either mannequins or we have role players that are set up with moulage. They look like they have wounds. Those are a lot of fun. Those are a lot of work, but they're a lot of fun. So we recently actually hosted 2 tabletops, one with each of the school districts here locally. Law enforcement in the districts said, hey, we really need some active shooter, some work. We need to make sure that we're prepared, that we're going to respond, make sure we're on the same page. And so we did one with Belton ISD in June, and then we did one with Temple in August. They were fantastic. We had representation from the school that we played the scenario out at, from the district. We had representation from multiple law enforcement agencies, EMS, hospital, emergency management. We just had a wide range of folks all coming to the table to work through a specific scenario. It provided the opportunity, and it's a safe environment for people to go, oh, I've never thought about that, or, oh, this part of the plan does not work. One thing that I've heard a lot from other active shooter tabletops from school districts is they plan on utilizing law enforcement for roles that law enforcement does not have the ability to fill. And so in a tabletop scenario, law enforcement can go, yeah, no, we don't have the staffing for that. We can't escort the child out of the building. Like, we're doing security, we're securing the scene. We have all of these law enforcement specific roles that we need to do. We can't fill what you are expecting us to do. And then they can leave that safe environment and make updates to your plan. Is a fantastic opportunity to work through a lot of those things. And both tabletops had great feedback. We plan on doing another set of tabletops this next summer, focused on reunification, because that's a monster all on its own. That whole process and working through reunifying kids with their families. And then building up to a full-scale exercise the following year. So we plan to work through that. But exercises are incredibly valuable. We can do something as simple as, and I am hoping we can start in January. We're going to do an EOC exercise here. We have different activation levels, and so we'll do an activation of our folks here and say, hey, we need you to report to the EOC. We are doing some technology upgrades, and so those will be in place. We'll make sure, hey, can you hook up to the internet? Do you know how to set this up and work this? And we'll go over those upgrades. Something that simple is much better to do on the front end than get to the response time and go, well, this is not working and I don't know what to do. And should I go or should I not? The answer to a lot of those questions up front. Any questions about local response?
We'll take a little 5-minute break for these folks.
Yes, sir. Let's do a 5-minute break, and then David's going to take over and talk about Texas emergency management.
We'll expeditiously move through the slide. That's how I roll.
Thank you.
So you have everyone's rapt attention.
Even if I don't, I'm still gonna move through there.
Oh, okay.
Unless you have questions, then I'm gonna move right.
Another tickle.
Good deal. You're my home. I was like,
No idea.
I'm gonna grab the water out of this cool refrigerator.
I think I have some data on.
I will do it. I'm allowed it.
I enjoyed the cool weather this week.
They get an email, but you know, from SARS. And the Friday before, when I got the email that I'm doing.
So I've heard.
Right, but they've improved that.
These are the areas I'm trying to get this juice to.
Wednesday, they will
So
text you an
try to
email and say,
know,
hey, are you?
I've asked
still
them a couple
available?
times. These are all the sections in the agreement, and the
Okay.
whole agreement.
You got a lot going on.
But
You don't
there are
think-
some places that I would
Just tell them
like
to
guidance from you
get
on, here's which that could be included.
And then
to include it, and so,
You should get
and
your
I would need that direction for.
And then by Wednesday.
Right, no, I understand. But my question-
So you're not. Last minute.
You know that.
I'm sure there's
I,
relation to
I
that.
don't really know. I think that,
Yes, and I think
I
that
think
you're Ryan,
You're
just
right,
fill it in
it's
for me.
filling in.
And I've changed some of that.
again, it's not.
Good, good. You were
Secretary to have.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
Finance director, just because they're usually not a council appointee, so there's less of a typical nature, and I think it's more,
Just to run the meetings.
I think it's more just internal equity, for us, if that makes sense. Like just keeping similar positions similar.
But he's. So.
Well, he's trying, I mean, it was nice, I guess, to step up.
I normally speak somewhere between.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew about that.
Good, yeah, he's very remarkable.
Maybe it's not on air.
You know what? We work with him a lot.
Good, 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 good.
It's pretty common
I'm telling you nothing.
cities.
No, but thank you though.
Thank you
for letting me be part of
Of course.
Oh, yeah, so on this whole deal, I think that.
Well,
So
chief,
we just.
none of the council.
I'm just talking about pointing.
So we asked for, I asked for like 64 new copies with the new changes, because they're gonna make some
It's
changes.
kind of nuanced.
And then we'll get like 64 in the district. March, get about 20 in.
How often do you
Reset.
drive to, especially drive to?
Try to go in, DLO,
I
and
don't
go.
take gas this
The
week.
other one, that's how they do it online, which you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so I'm driving pretty often. I don't know that
So we're gonna try to get the meat books out.
We could.
I could, yeah.
If you're into it. We've given up.
I'll be like, hey, I'm done. He's like, no, I'm not here.
Just have to shut down some part of town.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully we'll have new executive guides. We're gonna get them out to you, so you'll have.
Did these bylaws get approved? Okay.
I just can't.
Joshua.
You're gonna get it on the agenda.
Targets that you left and then move on.
Oh, I robot.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up.
So typically, you do, and then we go in a standby mode, and in case something does happen, the fire department.
Yeah. Here's my takeaway of this whole thing. Because I can see this coming. They have whole source of the-
So I guess.
And then they reach this council. And someone that has part of their application. So they. This hearing, which, we have a lot of those things like that.
I don't normally go, but if we, my goal is to have someone there, whether, and it's, we need to get someone there. One of us there,
One vote, just someone here, you're right, because we don't need to, you're right.
So right now, it's just.
So now you're basically on your phone. Hey, get off the call.
Did Jennifer-
Veteran background,
Shannon just gave it to
we-
you did not like there is what we're suggesting, different from our current practice.
I think
This section, it would be, and this hasn't changed from the last time we talked about this, I just wanted to highlight. Is outside that the appointee could accrue vacation and get paid out. I didn't know if they had some right now, there's a limit based on your actual years of service, so you can accrue, day one, you approve as if you're.
I think I prefer that you handle it or send it to them or put it on.
Goes back down to getting paid out. Years of service amount, so that's trying to be and Tracy. And not because we can hold better.
Let me get Laura to make
Now you.
You can call me or email me the.
I'll get it today.
Okay.
You hold on to that.
And it may already be in our.
Now that's scary. Yeah.
I just,
Don't like that.
I'm ready for you.
I'm ready.
We got
Let's do it. Let's do this.
Tracy will be right back.
Oh, we must not do this. I'll wait for it. Unless Mary, you want me to go?
Yes, sir. Take off.
So real quick, I just want to tie up a few spinning plates that, as we were going through the slide deck, I'm going to try to clean some of that up. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the slides. We'll breeze right through those. I really just wanted to have a little discussion about a few things that have changed in TDM and some of the processes and kind of organizational structure that's changed. I think you need to know that in your roles. But first off, I want to commend Jennifer and Chief Randalls for actually saying, hey, we want to do this G200. This is typically a class that myself and Martin, we go out to the jurisdictions and do. So I was all excited when she said, I want to do it, because I'm thinking, yes. And so I'll come and hang out and help you. So I'm going to do a few units real quick, but I commend them. It's good stuff. But the question I want to ask you is why are you taking this class? Why are you in here getting this information? Why do you think it's significant to you in your roles, especially say the mayor, but for each of you as well as city council people? Why do you think it's important?
Because if we haven't had training, we may not get some money.
Well, I'm gonna go down that money road, sir. Well, you asked.
Because Jennifer told them they had.
Jennifer said you have to be here.
Maybe.
So Jennifer's right. Guess what? For all senior elected officials, whether it's a county judge, a mayor, or maybe the sheriff, by law, you have to have this training within 180 days of taking office. Now, we don't always hit that date, right? A lot of times folks go for a couple of years without doing this training, but you need to have this training as a senior elected official, because at the end of the day, you are the emergency management director for this city of Temple. You're the final voice, right? You're the mayor, but you're also the EMD according to state law. For city council people, I don't know how many times you guys have had to deal with a disaster or an emergency since you've been in office, but I can probably count on one hand, and I've been doing this job for about 14 years across the state. I can probably count on one hand the amount of times a mayor or a county judge showed up at a disaster and said, man, I'm feeling fully comfortable and confident about everything's going on. I've got this. It never happens, right? That is not what happens.
So we've opened our ELC a couple of times.
Yep.
And they normally send me on a donut run.
But and it's true, right? That's true.
I mean, I like donuts.
But think about it. When something bad really does happen, who's calling you on your phone at night? Your constituents are calling you, hey, I don't understand why this, and how are you going to fix this? This class, when we teach the class, it's really to your benefit to understand what are the rules, what are the regulations, how do we play this game of emergency management? That allows you to talk to those people and go, hey, listen, this is what's going on. I know it looks really chaotic, and I know it looks out of whack. This is how it works. And you can talk knowledgeably about that, and that helps you and it helps your folks. So the training Jennifer kind of outlined, she had a little chart up there. Hey, you should do these trainings. You really should do those trainings. Just the simple stuff of the independent study courses really will give you some knowledge. They're like an hour long. How long are those classes?
They're short. And
They're very short. You can do them when you're, got nothing to do at the office. But you really need to understand how emergency management works. The world we live in today is not the world we lived in 30 years, 20 years, 5 years ago. The world is changing and things just get progressively worse. I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure you have. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Something's always going to happen where we are. It's just going to happen. And you need to be the best prepared you can be and understand, how we play this game. And from the state's perspective, as we kind of dovetail in with the local jurisdictions, our role as the district chiefs, and Martin has the Waco, and I've got 7 counties down here. Our role really is working with you guys. That's what we do. We're state employees, but we spend 95% of our time working with our local jurisdictions to help them do this stuff. Okay. So our role is to make you successful. We can only make you as successful as the folks you have in place. So you got Chief Randalls, you got Jennifer, you have other staff. We're here to support them in whatever they're doing. We're going to do our part, but we have to have those people in place, and you do. And she does a great job. Chief Randalls does a great job. So we're excited. In my district, I have some really good counties, have really good people. And so we're successful in a lot of disasters that we deal with throughout the year and the last couple of years. So that was one thing. One of the other slides, I'm trying to think of the bullets I have in my brain. I can only keep like 3 nowadays. I think the other issue was we had a slide. We talked about the disaster districts, what they used to be and what they are now. Just recently, last legislative session, we used to have what we called the Disaster District Committee or Council. And that basically was the group we assembled at the local level of state agency representatives. And Jennifer showed you a list of these 39 agencies. So at the local level, we assemble those agencies, the ones that we need in the room to deal with the disaster. And in the old days, the highway patrol captain, or what we called the command lieutenant, they were the chair of that group. So we're all sitting around the table like you are right now, and we'd have a chair and we would deal with the incident, right? Whatever was going on, we would deal with it. That changed last session. Now we no longer have the highway patrol has the chair of that group. The district chief now is the chair of that group, so to speak. And based on the type of incident, we may take one of those state agency partners and make them the chief or the chair, if you will, for that incident. I know it sounds confusing, but we've just changed the operational kind of structure of what we do. It makes it a little more efficient. We're a little more effective, a little more fluid. So that's changed since, again, just recently. They changed our titles. So same job, different title. What were some other things that we need to touch about organizational? So we used to have 6 regions in the state of Texas, 6 regions around the state of Texas. They were aligned with the highway patrol, go figure. We've changed that. Now we have 8 regions. Okay, now we have 8. We are now region 8, and that includes myself and the Waco area, Brazos Valley, and Austin area. So that's a new change for us, right?
Is that because of population growth?
No, it's because Chief Kidd wanted to realign. If you ever have looked at state agencies around the state, we all have a map and we all have different regions. Health Department, the DSHS, Department of Health, Human Service, they have their own regions. Texas Forest Service, they have their own regions, and none of them line up, right? None of them line up. It's a disaster in the disaster. So what he wanted to do is try to start to consolidate those regions and make them overlap correctly so that when we deal with a disaster in those areas, all of the right agencies are aligned and the people are aligned. And so it makes it organizationally more efficient. And so when we deal with disasters and stuff, time is of the essence, and we want to be able to get in there and do life safety. We want to look at stabilizing the incident. We want to get back to societal restoration, right? Those are the things we want to do. And having all that aligned, it works well. So we're excited about that going forward. And that's going to be a big change as we go down the road. So anything else from those first 4?
The districts remain the same. Just
Yeah.
for clarification.
Yeah, so the districts, right. So the disaster district is what we call it now, the disaster district. We used to call it the disaster district council, disaster district, community, whatever. Now we just call it the disaster district. And for, again, those align with the COG you mentioned earlier, the Council of Governments. There's 24 Council of Governments in the state of Texas. We have one at the Capitol, that's 25. But one district chief is assigned to each COG, and that's the 7 counties within our COG. Anything else?
Makes perfect sense.
All right, now what happened? Is this us? This is me.
That's you.
All right.
So you.
All right. So just real quickly. So when do we assemble the district, the disaster district committee? When would we do that? What would prompt us to do that? I'll ask Jennifer. Why would I assemble my district disaster committee, Jennifer?
I need you.
Huh?
If I need you.
She needs me. So and we'll take the solar eclipse event because that's on everybody's mind. So in the COG in this district, we'll probably have 8 different emergency operations centers across the 7-county area that are going to stand up their EOC, emergency operations. They're going to stand up, meaning they're going to go into operation. So anytime within the district, 1 or 2 EOC stands up, I'm obligated to stand up the district level EOC. Does that make sense? So if it's just Temple stands up the EOC based on what's going on, we may or may not activate just because, the incidents of a nature that is being handled locally. If Jennifer needs me, she can call me and I can help her, whatever. But once we get 2 of those guys fired up in an area, that tells us something's going on. Okay, so it's just kind of domino effect. The EOCs locally all stand up. The district level, we stand up and bring in all our people, and then we start working with the locals. What do you need? What's going on? If more than one DDC stands up, now the SOC, or regionally, we may look at this, the EOC going, let's stand up our EOC. So it's just a domino effect, local, district level, regional level, state of Texas. So we just kind of work upstream until everybody's activated and assisting with the disaster. Hurricanes are a good example. Anytime we have a hurricane, everybody's activated, everybody's working. But solar event's different. It's a planned event, right? We know when it's coming. We know what's going to happen. So we have plenty of time to plan, which we're doing. But at the end of the day, we don't know what we don't know. It could be, like we said, cloudy and raining and snowing in April. Who knows? Or it could be a beautiful day and everybody's here like we anticipate. But a planned event
We'll
versus
be here regardless.
it's going to happen no matter what, whether you see it. Right. So anyway, that's kind of the process for standing up an EOC. At the district level, again, this is what we currently have and what we call resources within the district right now. We have an assistant chief, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have 2 section chiefs, right? We cover preparedness and response and mitigation and recovery. The district coordinator, that's what we used to be. Now we're district chief is our title. We have ops tech, field ops people that come out and assist us technology wise with all the cool gadgets and stuff that we need to kind of assist. We have planners. We talked about planning. We have those folks on board. We have recovery staff, mitigation staff. But at the end of the day, what this all means to you guys is back in the day when Martin and I started out, there was we had like a coordinator, a state coordinator. We had like us, and we might have had somebody over here in preparedness and response. Most of these people right here didn't exist. We did it all that's what we did. We did everything, and it's a lot. And so over the years, as emergency management has evolved and the response roles and responsibilities have changed, TDM has been able to add all these staff resources to help the locals. It's not for us, it's for you guys. So now we have a lot of resources to bring to bear on what we do within our areas. So here's another map. And this is new. We are over, where are we? We're region 8. So we're over here. So that's our area chief, our assistant chief, Brandy Ashby, and Paul Gunnels and Bruce. Each of those cover those 2 respective areas that I mentioned earlier. Okay, and this is our region here. This is us. So again, that's us, Waco, Brazos, and Austin area. And so these are all these are the new district chiefs. Some of these are the old DCs. And again, each of us is assigned to a district which aligns with our call. All right. Quickly, as we operate the EOCs, these are the 4 conditions that we deal with at the state level and you deal with at the local level. They should be basically called the same things. Every day of the year, 24/7, 365, we operate in normal conditions. We manage the daily business of the state, right? If for some reason we need to move to an increased level of readiness, we move up to level 3. So that could be a lot of things that are going on. That could be information and intelligence we're receiving from various sources within the state of Texas to say, hey man, something's going on up over here. This has just occurred, a large hazmat, a large this, a large that, large wildland fires, whatever. We'll move our level up. Next level of activation is level 2, which is the escalated response. Things are getting a little worse. Now we've got multiple local EOCs that are engaged, municipalities that are engaged, the counties are engaged. So at that point, the district level is engaged and probably looking at the SOC at some level that is supporting us. And then at level 1, that's full scale emergency. That's big time stuff that's going on around the state that we're dealing with. And everybody's engaged in that. Say again?
You go to the next slide. We basically created taken that visual and created, it's small up here and I apologize for that. Our activation levels. So we have our normal business, that's just normal everyday stuff. Level 3, we have that as either in-person or virtual EOC. And so we put this in place because we may not really need people to come to a room. We may need to just hop on a Teams. And so we've listed out what the description of some potential things there. There may be a storm coming up, a winter storm, a spring thunderstorm type thing. If there's something that is escalating, maybe we've not gotten to the point where we need to have an EOC fully staffed, or if there's a planned event, really, like for our parade, we could probably do a team VOC. We just do it as a practice run. But then we have what the minimum staffing is that at least are notified, preferably involved. Then we've got our level 2 partial activation. That means we could either for station 1 or 8. So we could be at Central Station. If it's just a handful of people, we may just do it there. Because honestly, if it's just a handful of people, we're all down here. We're not out at the airport. It's a little out of everybody's way. So if we're just needing to pull over Chief Reynolds, or if Kathy needs to come over, whoever, then it's closer, a little bit easier. We honestly, and I actually need to update this, we may have a virtual option for this as well. But if we get to the level 1 full activation, we are going out to the training center. We are all hands on deck. We're playing ball at that point. We may even need to have some satellite locations depending on the number of staff involved and what our response is. So
And that's a great add-in slide. So, and Jennifer mentioned earlier in the slide deck is the importance of being able to operate under a common system. And she mentioned the National Incident Management System. That's the system we use throughout the country. Everyone in the country uses that system, right? Federal government on down. So I know when Jennifer activates and she's at a certain level, I know what the conditions are that she's facing. In most cases, I don't need to necessarily talk to her. I just need to know what level she's at and I can respond accordingly. So we all use these same levels, these same processes and platforms so that we can communicate and work together without necessarily having to be there trying to figure out what you guys are doing or what anybody's doing, right? That's the beauty of the system. Other state assets, we're not going to dig into this, but again, 4 sections. A preparedness section has its own staffing and resources, operations, recovery, mitigation. Point for the local officials that we have a lot of resources and assets available at the state level in TDN now. So if you come up against a problem, you come up against an issue and you say, hey man, David, we really need some help with X, whatever that is, you can always reach to Jennifer. Jennifer can call and say, hey man, can you guys bring a bunch of experts to come talk to us about this stuff? And man, we'll get those guys and gals together and they'll come do a presentation and take questions. So never be afraid to ask for stuff because we didn't used to have a lot, but now we got a lot, so we need to use it, right? And again, I'm not going to go and read all this, but basically preparedness covers all of the state and local planning pieces that Jennifer talked about earlier. Some of the specialists we have in the special units, technology hazard units, really deals with all the hazard materials issues, moving of hazard materials across the state of Texas. The WHIP is a program about moving materials across the state that we manage. Radiological emergency preparedness, we have that REP program. We keep up with all the nuclear and regulatory waste in the state of Texas. And again, we have a training unit, which kind of oversees this type of training right here. And then, of course, we have an exercise unit that assists the locals do exercises. So all of the templates and all of the tools that Jennifer uses to put these together are produced either at the FEMA level or at the state level. Okay, that's the support we kind of provide. In response, most everything we do in the response world is basically dedicated towards responding to emergencies. 80% of our time, that's what we do. The other 20% is all these other pieces. And I say we, Martin and myself and John as a CLO at some point. But that's our focus point. And then in coordination with what's going on at the state level, that's where we spend a lot of our time integrating with the locals to the district state level and to the state level at the SOC to make things happen, to coordinate responses. Response is easy. We all know how to respond. We all know how to take care of emergencies. It's everything that happened before and after that's problematic in my world. So just know that state operations center gets fired up. They're doing their business just like we're doing it here at the district, just like you're doing it at your local EOC. And then again, some specialists in the response section, the natural hazards officer. We have our own meteorologist. We have some other specialists besides meteorologists. Who's the other specialists we got down?
I don't know if that includes tech hazards.
Well, yeah, we got tech hazards is there, natural hazards officer. Anyway, we have some other specialists that they've been bringing on board, and this operation tech area, a lot of technology that we're not that smart on. We've acquired those folks that are specialists. We've acquired the tools and the equipment, so we can really go out and do a lot of work in the field now, and intelligence, information gathering, if you will. Okay, cool. ETN, there's not much to talk about that. We don't shelter anymore in Bell County, so it's kind of, you guys are kind of in the clear. Star support and training, yeah, other technology.
State of Texas assistant request. So that is how we request our resources. It's called a STAR, just that.
Okay. Recovery, again, when does recovery kick in? When we talk about recovery, what are we talking about?
Get back to normal.
Yeah, kind of getting back to normal or dealing with the aftermath of disaster, right? So after tornado comes shooting through Salado or wherever it comes shooting through, you know, we respond and we take care of life safety issues. We try to get everything back to normal so people can function. But then what do we do with all the mess? What do we do with all the stuff that we don't have anymore or people lost? That's recovery. That's getting people through that recovery process, getting things back to normal. So we've made huge progress, last 4 or 5 years maybe in the recovery section. A lot of that came out of the Harvey document that Jennifer talked about earlier. From that document was the prelude to all of the money and all of the effort that's gone into TDM to build up those recovery assets and resources. And we have a bunch, and we're not going to talk about them right now. But anytime we have a disaster now, the disaster recovery folks are already on board during the response piece of it now. Before they would kind of show up towards the end. What are we doing? No, now those guys are engaged at the get-go. So we can use them right off the bat to do recovery work. But basically, their job is to kind of come out and manage all of the documentation, all of the record keeping, all of the processes that we deal with to get FEMA funding if it becomes available. And that's a lot. That's a lot of work. Jennifer's been through it. It's not easy, but if you do it right, you can get money when the time comes. We do damage assessments. We got to go out and define how bad is bad, right? And we've got new tools that we used to go out in a van in a vehicle and go look at it, take pictures and write it on a piece of paper. Now we do it with a QR code and a camera. You can do it at your house. You can just go in there, hit the QR code and take pictures. Here's my damage, David. So technology has helped us quite a bit. Matter of fact, FEMA has taken a lot of the technology we've developed in Texas and wants to replicate that throughout the country because it works so well. So
Use drones.
we do. We have drones. They have issues, but I mean, using drones becomes more problematic than it used to be, but we do have them. Yeah. And most of the state agencies have them. Highway Patrol has them. Texas Forest Service has them. A lot of agencies have drones.
We have drones in the fire department and the police department here locally.
A lot of the cities have their own. A lot of counties have their own. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. We call this the PSTAT, the Public State of Texas Assistance tool. And that over there is the ISTAT, Individual State of Texas Assistance Tool. So literally, you just take a picture of that QR code on your phone at your house over there, and you punch in your information, and then you hit submit, and it goes right into the database. And what we're looking for, right, when it comes to recovery, we're trying to hit a number. Jennifer mentioned earlier, you want to get federal funding, you have to hit certain numbers. For Bell County, I think we had to hit $1.7 million in recordable or documented losses. So these tools allow us to collect a lot more information quickly, allows us to validate to FEMA Region 6, hey, we're at $3 million in Bell County, right? Or we're at wherever it may be. That tool helps us a lot. Speed is of the essence. We don't want to drag our feet on this stuff. So new tools, new processes, but they work and they're valuable when you're dealing with recovery.
Those are pieces of information that we would push out in our social media or with press releases that we would share. We actually, for the first time, rolled it out in February with the winter storm.
Yeah.
I think it was the mediocre response just because it's new, but that will be going out earlier on.
And that's another good part for you guys to know when you're dealing with a local disaster is that when your people are calling you or you're getting inundated with emails and phone calls at your office, if you're able, like Jennifer says, if that information is being pushed out right from the get-go, what does that do? It minimizes the amount of workload and calls that you're getting at your office, and it gets them where they need to go to take care of their business, right? If they can take care of their own business, hoorah. That takes it off our backs and your backs. So being able to use that tool and get that information out quickly, it's a lifesaver in our business. The other piece of this is what we call the disaster summary outline. That's by law. There's 3 things that we have to do when a disaster deck is filed. You have to write a letter to the governor, you have to create the disaster declaration, and you have to do a DSO, disaster summary outline. Those 3 things have to be done. All right. And it's pretty simple. It's an online tool. But once we submit this, we've met the requirement, we can always go back and adjust it and add to it later on, but it's one of the requirements for a disaster deck to be processed. The group that I was talking about, they're no longer called the Disaster Recovery Task Force. Now they're the Incident Support Task Force. They've changed their name, but that's the group I talked about getting there right as the incident is kind of, we've had the disaster. These guys are showing up and they're kind of looking at all these pieces: donations, volunteer management. The recovery process is facilitating all the work at the local level with BOADs and COADs and other issues that the response guys don't have a lot of time to deal with. Those guys show up and they take that load off your back, and they'll deal with our local partners to help them as well, because you may not have a lot of staff to do these things. So big check mark for those guys. The disaster finance coordinator, again, these are staffing positions, kind of what their role is, but we're not going to go into what they do, but just know that we have them. We have those folks out there in the field to assist in these different areas. Mitigation section, same type of deal: state planning, local planning. There's funding in mitigation. So if you're smart and you know how to work that when the disaster hits, you can get mitigation funding to do all kinds of stuff. All right. You got to have a mitigation plan that's current, though.
We are actually working on updating our plan to expire in September. Not delays on our part, delays on FEMA's part, but we are in the process of getting a new plan in place. So that will be rolled out next year. You'll see that probably about this time next year come to council for approval.
Yeah, you guys got to approve that, sure. Grants, again, there's all kinds of different grants available. Typically, when you have a large scale disaster, I'll just use a hurricane again because it's easy. If it costs funding for $100 billion was allocated in the disaster for a hurricane, typically around 15% of that money will be allocated to do mitigation activities. All right. So knowing if you're in that disaster and you're a part of that declared disaster, you should know right off the bat downstream, there's going to be additional mitigation funding coming that you can probably access. So for EMCs and for the mayor and folks, you need to know, hey, there's money coming. Let's make sure we're getting a piece of it if we can, right? You don't want to miss those opportunities when they hit. And having all your ducks in a row, like Jennifer kind of alluded to, is a big piece of it, right? It's all about paperwork, documentation, and applications, but you can get it.
How does this all work when if the internet is out? How electric is out? You can't communicate.
So are you talking about trying to do the funding mechanisms of
Well,
submitting
the
documents?
paperwork, the
Well-
documentation, having your PIN number,
Right.
all those
I
things.
feel your pain. So when we talk about funding for a disaster, for that piece of it, that can go on for a while. So you don't have power for 2 or 3 days, whatever. That stuff's all going
Weeks.
to wait. Yeah, whatever it may be. But the phone process, like if you have a cell phone and it's got service, right?
Yes.
It just has to have cellular service. You can do those QR codes and submit your
Sure.
data right then. So you can still do stuff, but at the end of the day, we'll still take it by paper. You can fax it. Believe it or not, we still have fax machines at the SOC. And they sit over there in the corner. We all wonder, does anybody use that fax? We still have them.
Do you even know the number?
I do actually know the numbers. I do have them. I don't think you probably have, but I
I
have.
do not.
Again, I don't think they've been used to God knows how long. Anyway, so this just was kind of walking you through funding process. We're not going to talk about each piece, but basically everything in FEMA, everything in the government is a process. We work through the process. We do our work. At the end of the day, we get an award, hopefully. Okay. And that's kind of similar for some of the other disaster funding that gets put together. All right. Fun stuff. All right. Lastly, for me, declarations and assistance. And we touched a little bit on how to do a declaration. So we're going to shoot on through here. So the process, again, there's a process and procedures for both everything we do during emergencies and disasters. What does the local government have to do? You have a job. I can't do anything until you do something, right? So you have to use your own resources first. That means, like Jennifer mentioned, anything that the city of Temple owns as a resource or asset, you have to be using that. If you've got a bunch of stuff stuck over at one of your yards somewhere and you call me and say, hey, I need X amount of stuff. And I go, but don't you already have like 5 of those water buffaloes over there? Oh yeah, we don't want to use. Okay. You have to use all your stuff. You have to be having all of your resources and assets engaged. Okay. You got to be looking at mutual aid. You got to look at your other cities, the county, anything within Bell County. Do they have what you need, right? Obtain assistance from local volunteer groups and businesses. So your VOADs, your COADs, any of those groups that are organized within your jurisdiction, the county, at the city, you need to be working with those guys and letting us know, hey, everybody that can be in the game is in the game, David. I still need this though. All right. Okay. Let's talk about that. Activate emergency response contracts. So if the mayor does a disaster declaration, what is he really doing when he says, hey, we're doing a disaster declaration for that my 7-day period? What does that do when he signs the document or she signs the document? What does that really do? What's that set in motion automatically? For Jennifer, I'll try to help you. For Jennifer, what does that mean to Jennifer when the mayor signs it?
It just kicks off the whole process.
The process being what? An example. What were we talking about earlier? She said we're revising the emergency operations plan and we're doing the annexes. So when you sign that document, you're basically activating
The plan.
the plan. So all of the plans and annexes that are applicable to your disaster are now in effect. Okay? That's what you're doing. Boom. Everything's in play. That tells us we're serious.
A shooting at a school, a mass shooting, let's say at a school, does this activate Jennifer not being a school employee? Who gets activated with that?
So
That's not necessarily a disaster.
It depends, when you say mass shooting, are we talking?
A Uvalde
I-
incident,
Uvalde, then I would absolutely be.
be involved right away.
Yes, ma'am. So, I work
We would open
closely.
the EFC.
We would open the ESC to support the district. We would partner with the district. I go to both Temple and Belton's Safety and Security Committee meetings. So I'm ingrained with them and they know to contact me if they need anything, if there's anything we can do to support. That's part of why we did training on the active shooter tabletop, why we're gonna do the reunification.
Yeah,
Because there's resources that we can help support them with. If they need anything, we can make that request up to David if we can't provide it. So it would be important for us to get involved. And it really, Uvalde level, absolutely. If it's only a few kids and it can be handled here locally, it just really depends on
the level.
the level of
Makes
incident.
sense.
yeah, and there's certain types of incidents that we're going to be engaged with at the get-go. And that's one of them. Any type of a mass shooting, any type of a school incident shooting, whether it's a large gathering event where lots of people there may be shooting, whatever, we're automatically instantly engaged in those at the state level and the district level. We're going to be there.
And you made reference saying that Bell County was no longer a, what was the term you used? Shelter site.
Yeah, we used to do sheltering,
We
But not-
used
but not
to
anymore.
partner, we were a sister county for Brazoria County. and
point to point.
Point to point. I always call it a sister county, sorry. And so anytime they would evacuate due to a hurricane, they would come here. This would be
Right.
their designated spot. So we ended that agreement during COVID.
Right.
It was not a good way for us to house them here locally. We were strapped with what we were dealing with that response. That was kind of a response and a response that
Uh-huh.
we just weren't prepared for. And so the county felt it appropriate at that time to end that.
So something like Hurricane Harvey, we would reactivate that potentially?
So what I have been told and what I tell others, if it is large enough, like if Houston's evacuating, that's a lot of people and they're gonna go somewhere. And with us being on 35, we're gonna have people camp out
Okay.
here. So that's just, while we don't plan to open shelters for hurricanes,
Right.
if it's something to that magnitude, I'm going to recommend that we at least have one prepared
Mhm.
because we're gonna have people who stop
Sure.
here, maybe on the way to Dallas or wherever.
That type of planning, you kind of have it in your back pocket. If you have to
If
have
you
it,
need
you have
it.
it, but you don't advertise that. You
Right.
want to solve your problems, but not everybody else.
Those are internal discussions. that
Yeah.
we don't have perspective.
So good, great question. So yes, there's certain things that we're going to engage with right away, right off the bat, immediately. So, the other thing we try to deal with when we talk to our county judges and our mayors and folks is that in our world, what we do, we know what your roles and responsibilities are. We know what the judges and the mayors have to do. What's important is that they know what we do. Because if Jennifer's on a vacation in the Bahamas, like she gets to go every year, I don't know where she's going, but she's going to play. If she's gone and Chief Randall's is, guess what? We're back to you, and you need to know, it's part of the job. You need to know, hey, what does TDM do for me? What do I need to do? Do I call David direct? Absolutely, if you need to. But you have to know what we do, because otherwise you're kind of at a disadvantage. These guys know, but if they're gone or out of whack, you have to have that knowledge. So this isn't
He's
the,
on vacation also.
or he could be on vacation in who's taking, right? So see, it just rolls downhill.
Look, everyone.
Everybody's gonna have it. You don't want to be that anymore. You're like,
You're on your own.
that's right. I don't want to be that guy. So anyway, and again, like Jennifer mentioned earlier, once you guys have determined you don't have the resources and assets, you're tapped out, you go to the county. County says, hey, David, we don't have it. We can't help them. So we'll be in the game. Okay, easy stuff. Again, local disaster debt. Why do we do this? We do it because we're in a situation where we think we need to exercise extraordinary powers. Okay? And we can talk about all the things that you can do. And basically, as a county judge and our mayor, you have a lot of latitude. It's almost like you have plenary powers like the governor has. There's some things you cannot do, but there's a lot of things that you can do. And you exercise that ability to help manage the incident and the disaster within your community. And we can always ask that question, hey, David, can I do A or B? Well, let's talk about A and B. See if we can, okay? But again, the local disaster comes in. We use the extra powers if we need to. We activate the emergency operations plan and the annexes. Additional liability protection for governments. When we're under disaster, a lot of ordinance and things can be scratched out. We're not going to enforce these, or we may add a new temporary type of a rule or something. We want to put this in place, and you can do that, and you can enforce that. Again, request general assistance from the state and federal governments. We got that piece. Again, activate all the different mission areas within emergency management. So that's really what a disaster declaration does. It gives you the ability to better manage the disaster that you're dealing with.
The temporary rules that could be activated be like curfews.
Yeah, yeah, and that's that's one that happens. Controlling ingress and egress of your jurisdiction,
Okay.
or placing a curfew and saying, hey, or we don't want anybody parking over here for the next 2 days, or whatever it may be. If it's justified and the group has decided we need this in place right now to manage this, that's what you do. And that's I don't know too many times where it's not been supported at the higher levels of government. That's your right. That's your by law. You have that ability. So cool.
Other than COVID masks.
Huh?
Other than
Oh my
COVID
gosh.
masks.
That's not, we don't talk about COVID.
No.
So
Never
anyway,
coming back.
no, it's a good one.
Can we
But
still do that?
Yeah, right. Go back to COVID mask.
No, curfew, we just.
Oh, yeah, you can do it. You just if you're under disaster deck. Anyway, just some examples right here, and we just kind of talked about those things. So yeah, it can really be just about anything if it's meeting the need during the disaster. And again, we talked about the process, right? Again, emergency management folks, the mayor get together, county judge, you all kind of talk about it. Hey, let's do this disaster deck. We'll submit the summary outline and then shoot that thing to the governor's office. Pretty straightforward. Again, just a little graphic. Everything starts local. We move to the district level, up to the state level. Pretty simple. It's easier when you see it in a picture. And again, the state assistance, we call that a STAR nowadays. Those can be done online, and EMCs and all those folks know how to do that. I always try to teach folks in some of your departments, it's good if those folks know how to do a STAR too, just in case something happens to those people and a STAR needs to be submitted. I mean, Jennifer and the EMCs, they know they can call me directly and I can submit one for them as well. But generally, we like it to come from the local jurisdiction up. So that's just the tool we use. Anyway, another little graphic kind of upside down. Disaster happens. Again, the DSO is submitted. We do our PDAs or the ISTAT PSTAT tool. We might get a major disaster deck from the president. If we do, great. We get the disaster deck granted. That opens the doors. That opens the funding. That opens the process by now, and we can now start to incorporate all of the mechanisms to get relief and recover funds or receive funds to deal with the disaster. Okay. That's how it works in a nutshell right there. And then there's different types of declarations. The most obvious is a major disaster declaration. That's the one we're most familiar with. Emergency declarations do occur. Typically, you'll have an emergency declaration that transitions into a disaster declaration, generally speaking. FMAGs or fire management assisted grants, that's specific to firefighting. Those are grants that are approved when we have large scale complex fires or where there's infrastructure that's been damaged or close to jurisdiction where there's lots of folks we had to evacuate, we had to shelter. There's some criteria we try to check the box if we can, and we can get the FMAG approved. Funding can roll back into the local jurisdictions to help offset those costs. SBAs, you guys are probably familiar with SBAs. That's always kind of the go-to when like we had winter apocalypse or some of these disasters where recovery dollars didn't necessarily roll into it, but they provided a mechanism for businesses to get money if they lost, business revenue and stuff like that. And then USDA has their own type of a declaration. Typically, it has to deal with livestock issues, crop issues. That they produce those every now and then as well. A lot of them up in the Panhandle area. Anyway, the little note there at the bottom, the recovery and the funding mechanism. It's a big book. We call it the Papa G. It's about 500 pages. It's a lot of documentation and a lot of reading, but we've slimmed it down quite a bit, and we know how to make it work, and we can help you guys be successful.
Oh, the what? Papa G?
Papa G. So that stands for the Public Assistance Policy Guide. Public Assistance, Public Administration Guide, I think, Papa G.
Sounds like a pizza.
Yeah, I can't even recall what it was called. I have to use Papa
Sounds
G.
like our sandwiches over
Yeah,
there.
those are the
Yeah,
sandwiches.
it's Papa G.
What was my dad's grandpa name?
Papa
Yeah,
G?
I love it. Papa. Yeah. All right. Eligibility again, based on the type of disaster it is, generally speaking, these criteria kind of fall into place. It's assistance provided only if you're in a declared county. So real quickly, I talked about a threshold. Bell County has a threshold. The city of Temple does not have a threshold. All of the work, all of the damages within Bell County proper add up to the threshold number. So if damages in Bell County exceed $1.7 million, that means you've met your threshold, number one. And the second thing is, you've done your disaster declaration, you've done your letter to the governor, you've done your DSO, and the governor says, we're doing a disaster declaration for these counties. He'll specifically say, these counties are part of my disaster declaration, right? That's the big piece of it, being in the declared disaster. And at that point, they take that information, they ship it up to FEMA Region 6. FEMA Region 6 looks at it and goes, yeah, these guys are in a disaster right now. And then they push it to the president for signature. But you have to be A, met the threshold, and B, be in a declared county. Uninsured losses are eligible. So typically, if you have any type of insurance on any loss, insurance has to come into play first. You can't get double paid, right? You can't get an insurance settlement and get FEMA federal dollars. Community, again, must have exhausted all available resources. And that's the piece that we put in initially when we apply for the declaration. We've already kind of proved up. We've already exhausted everything at the state level. So if we've exhausted everything at the state level, you've exhausted everything at your level, okay? Affected community must declare a state of local disaster. We talked about that.
So real quick on the counties declared. So for Harvey, even though we were not impacted by the hurricane itself, we were part of the disaster declaration because we provided sheltering for the impacted county.
And a lot of
There
counties
can
like,
be like extensions on who's
yeah,
impacted.
and like Milam was in part of that too, because just because the hurricane inundated the coastline, it ultimately moved inland and it flooded and it caused other damages from the hurricane storm event. So other counties farther in central Texas were included in that as well. That's a good point. So just because you're not right around it doesn't mean you may not be included.
So the losses will that cover losses of deductibles of insurance? Is that where that comes in?
So there is a
So not
mechanism
sure.
for deductibles. Yes, there is. It's tedious at best to get refunded for that. There's a lot more steps you've got to go through, right? But they do some reimbursement on a portion of deductibles. I've seen that in the past.
So individuals.
Well, remember, we've got individual assistance, which is you. And
Yes,
then we've got public assistance, which is everything to do with the public infrastructure, whether it's, debris removal or it's emergency protective services, road and bridges, utilities, parks. That's public assistance. So that, those federal dollars come back into the local jurisdictions, and then they take that money and go back out into their areas and utilize that money to do what they need to do. Individual assistance is handled between FEMA and the individual client.
And you were talking about deductibles for individuals.
Yeah, I mean, anything.
Well, and it could be for businesses too, but a lot of that goes through a different mechanism in SBA and all that kind of stuff.
What
Yeah.
about like the brush collection from the ice storm that?
Yeah, most of that, if you were in a declared, yeah, that would be debris management, yeah.
Uh,
I don't think we met.
Oh,
I don't think we
yeah.
met the threshold. I'm sorry, what, for the debris management from February.
But the whole county didn't have 1.7 million to get.
So,
That we could put in on it.
Actually, hindsight being 2020, we should have gone ahead and declared. It was one of those, oh, the ice is worse than it is. Oh, the debris is worse than it is. Oh, we now have to get a contract. So it was way after the fact. We still could have gone and done a disaster deck. We just didn't. In the future, I'm gonna recommend that we go ahead and do it. There's no harm, no foul if we do it and then we don't meet the threshold. There's not any penalty or anything like that. But with what we had and what the other cities had, we probably could have met. the threshold.
$1.7 million, that's.
Is it
that's
too
a
late?
County.
Not that much, is it? Would you,
To retroactively apply?
I don't
there's a
know.
period of time.
There's a period of time.
There's a drop dead date.
I don't remember what.
And so one of the reasons TDM, the state, has worked hard to find ways to gather that data is because that's the first hurdle, is getting that lost data. If we can get that data input and get it somewhat validated, if you will, then we go to FEMA and say, hey, we've already met these thresholds. And that kind of moves the ball forward quicker because now they're starting, FEMA looks at it and they look at the big picture. Well, this county's declared, this county's declared, this county's declared. They're all meeting their thresholds. So it kind of paints a picture for them. Things are worse than what we thought. We understand what's going on. So it moves the mark forward. If you can't get that data quickly and you can't get the folks to provide information and you can't do the PDAs, the clock is ticking every day. The clock is ticking because there's going to be a deadline where that information has to be submitted. So there's a lot of things that have to be done quickly by the EMCs and the city level. But at some point in time, you want to collect that data from your folks, the individuals in the city and the county, because it helps a lot, helps immensely. Yeah. Yep.
So regarding threshold, even if you don't make your threshold, you only make it to 1.5 million, the state will still collect that information and that will add to the state threshold of the 52 million or whatever.
53, whatever it is now.
So
Yeah.
even if it doesn't benefit you directly, it will benefit your neighbors who are also affected by the disaster.
And sometimes that's a hard sell because you're in one county and the county next to you got hit worse. And they're like, hey man, go ahead and do yours, land pass. This is going to help us over here in 4AL. And they're like, well, I'm not getting anything out of this. And that's what happens. Why am I doing this? So that's a hard sell, but generally as a whole community, we should always try to support our neighboring counties and jurisdictions anytime we can, because at the end of the day, if they benefit, you may benefit as well. You know, kind of being in close proximity to them,
In a
right?
situation like that, is it as simple as simply signing off on a disaster declaration, even if we're not hitting our threshold, to be able to help the county next to us?
Yeah, so you.
I mean, is that going to end, if I sign something, is that gonna end up triggering something for our emergency management people that ends up costing, an extra $10,000 or $15,000? Or is it simply a piece of paper?
So you should always do the disaster declaration based on the conditions within your jurisdiction.
Sure.
Don't ever do a disaster deck to try to augment or help somebody else. You have to make that decision because you're basically stating by the law, I have met these conditions. I'm doing this disaster deck at this point because of this condition. It only lasts for 7 days. At the end of those 7 days, if those conditions have changed and the EMCs go, yeah, we thought what we had, but we don't really have that.
Yeah.
But we did collect $100,000 worth of damages. That information is still in the database.
Yeah.
It'll be used.
I got it.
You can stop your efforts,
Yeah.
but we'll still use that data.
Okay.
So,
Create more work for me.
yeah, it's work.
Very good.
Yeah, we've struggled with assessing the damage sometimes too.
Right. So I think probably
Quantifying, assessing.
Some of it, I
Go ahead and
think,
declare it.
we should help.
That ISTAT PSAT will make it simple.
Yeah, and part of that ISTAT PSAT process that's kind of evolved over the last year or so is they've actually created user videos. So as the individual, if I have damage, I can actually go to the site, the TDM site, and there's videos that'll show me how to assess my damage. How much damage to that house is that? Is that major? Is that minor? And so they can literally sit there on their phone, watch the video and do their stuff. they've done a lot of work to try to make it easy for the end user.
And
They'll
that's,
sign a dollar, excuse me, they'll sign a dollar amount.
So basically you assign as an individual, you put that information in there and you just may say, based on my damages, this is what I think the loss is, right? Just like on the PA side, we assigned a number to it and that may not even be close, but we assign a number, we go back and fix it later. I think the IA does have a entry field. Yeah. But again, it's all subject to being validated, but the initial thing of getting that data collected is the big hurdle. Get that.
They'll do a PDA to validate that information.
Yeah, we'll come back and they'll check it later.
that QR code thing, if we put that out on our website to people, I mean, it should be pretty easy to collect.
That's his intent, to make it easy for the resident to submit their damages.
Because prior to those QR codes, I went through a damage assessment class and it was completely overwhelming and I thought there.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And we've tried to make it as easy as possible. Really, we have. And we've got a lot of disasters that we didn't think would take that actually were declared just because we hustled and got out there and got the locals to help us out because we thought we could hit the number and eventually we were able to. So again, here's the categories for your public assistance. This is specific to you guys. So any damages in these areas right here are all reimbursable through FEMA public assistance. So it behooves your EMC guys and your team to know, hey, these are all the different categories and there's a lot of sub items under each of those categories that would qualify. So when you have a disaster, when things are going on in your county and city, you really need to go through this because there might be something that happened to you and you think, well, it doesn't really fall. I don't see it on there. Dig a little deeper and you might find it, or you'll find something that applies to what you lost. And so we always. And again, now we've got staff that knows this stuff like the back of their hand. We'll bring them out and they can assist you as well.
And category G, parks, et cetera,
Mhm.
that's damage to parks and to recreational.
Structures, park equipment,
Structures.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, you got to dig into the minutia of the categories, but there's a lot of ways to get funding if you know what you're doing.
On the ice storm, we had category D because I did some of it, so
Category
Water control
D.
facilities during
D,
ice storm. big-
I do
you're
water.
saying D is
Water, I
involved,
fixed,
yes.
I fixed a lot of water lines for the city and for
Yeah.
private people during that ice storm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, during the first ice storm, the was it 21? We definitely
Yeah, we
met
did a
the
lot of that,
threshold
too.
without question.
Yep.
Just in the city, we met the county threshold.
I was told, I was in the hospital, but I was told we did what my company did.
And to be honest, what Chief was saying, it's typically the larger cities that can hit the threshold really quick. The county may not, in unincorporated areas may not be so fast, but the cities can really boost it up really quickly. So. And then the threshold, this is old. I don't know who this is for.
So I
Uh,
updated the numbers.
yeah, it's 1 point. Oh, these are new. I think our,
Fiscal year
the state's
23.
like 53 now. I think the state's like,
Fiscal year 23 information. So
when it, okay. So
until a
50
new sheet comes out, that's the most current.
So that's your current Bell County 1.6. Cool. There you go. So again, damage assessments, we're not going to dig into this. You guys understand the concept of that. And again, at the end of the day, what are we all doing? We're trying to get things back to normal as quickly as we can. That's the goal, is to get things back to normal.
Look at that picture.
Yeah, as
Is that Houston? Is this Harvey?
that's just probably a tornado or something that came through. It might have been straight line winds.
Oh,
Who knows
right,
where?
right.
No telling. That happens all over the state. Anyway, they just threw some pictures in here, I guess, to kind of make it look exciting. Anyway, something burning down during the wildland fire. I don't know. I don't make these things
Well,
up.
they accomplished it.
Yeah. We should have some high tech stuff instead of PowerPoint. But anyway, again, state resources. We have a ton of state resources other than what we talked about, but just quickly, we've got what we call incident management teams. We've got public work response teams. You can read down the list. But the point is, there's a lot of state resources available to you at the local level if you need it that we can bring to bear during a disaster emergency. And staging areas, that's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. We've got regional warehousing now. We've got regional EOC warehouses. So a lot of changes at TDM. And then real quickly, direct emergency. Yeah, you knew this already. We touched on all that. So summary, yeah. Okay, good. Now I will say that the TDM webpage that that thing's evolved over the last couple of years. It's 200% better than it was a year ago. Have you been on it lately?
Agreed.
Agreed. And they hire, it's all about money and hiring those people that know how to do that. It's gotten way better. If I say that, because I'm a skeptic of everything we kind of do, it's way better than it used to be. I'm happy to tell people to go to that site. Anyway, there's my information right there. Call me if you want to.
So you're in Killeen physically?
Well, my office is at the A&M campus, but I live in Lampasas County, and I don't spend much time in the office.
The A&M campus in
Yes, ma'am,
Killeen?
Central Texas. That's my office. Absolutely. And there's the real numbers that matter right there, but you probably already have those, I'm guessing. All right, Jennifer, what else? I'm done.
So that is the end of the class. I just wanted to extend an opportunity to ask any additional questions, see if we need to have any further discussion on anything that might be confusing or. We do plan on doing a disaster declaration for the eclipse. And so that's one of those, even though it's a planned event, we anticipate needing to have that in place, and that really will just position us to be able to pull that trigger faster. So.
You can do that preemptively.
How many other communities do you think will follow suit?
Probably all of them in the past.
I know Coryell County is.
I know Coryell County is, I think the other cities, the other municipalities in Bell County, to include Bell County, we all are. There's debate on when to put it in. The county is hoping to,
Yeah, again, there's debate on what.
on when to put it in place, when to enact the disaster declaration. The county is hoping to get a better handle on campsites that people are creating, and by having the extraordinary powers with the disaster declaration, they may be able to capture that earlier. But we don't necessarily need the disaster declaration weeks in advance, so we're just working through what
I
that looks
thought I
like.
heard you say something about a 7-day window.
So that is once you put it in place, that's good for 7 days, and then, so if the mayor says, hey, we're gonna do a disaster declaration, then it will come back to council, and you can either renew it or you can let it die.
What about
Fire,
the
probably a better word.
COVID one, for example? Mayor did it initially, and then we brought it to y'all within the 7-day period,
Mhm.
and you granted it to extend it. And the way that we worded it was that it would remain in effect until the governor's disaster declaration lapsed. So then but you would either set it for a specific date, or you have some kind of time frame. So the mayor only has the authority to do it without council consent for 7 days.
It's a checks and balances just to make sure that the mayor's not getting crazy. Then things in play.
Yeah, you get a little crazy with those extraordinary powers, Mayor. So
Extraordinary.
you know, not extraordinary.
Yeah.
Doing bridges, that's evacuated.
I knew this.
Everybody else.
So Chief, did you have anything you want to add, or?
Oh, no, I don't think so, other than really appreciate everybody's attendance today and attention. Thank you very much. It helped us get past a very important milestone
Yes.
in our NIMS compliance goals. So really appreciate y'all.
Can we take just a few minutes to talk specifically about the eclipse? I know you, David, you did a presentation.
Just let me know what you want to talk about.
Well, and I don't think so
Sorry, I should have warned everybody.
we declare a disaster around
I'll have it stop.
around the eclipse, yeah, around that time. And then what does that disaster declaration get us? I mean, is it going to then possibly bring in more state assets? Is it going to possibly bring in funding? You know, the $1.7 million. I mean, to me, that is an event that we already know about, right? And it would seem like that the state government would say, you guys need to be preparing for that now, and you're on your own, unless something extraordinary happens.
So let me answer the first part, and then you guys jump in where you think at the local level. So let's talk regionally or within the COG region. So you talked about a disaster declaration. So a couple things the disaster deck does at our level for us, right? This is a planned event, not a response type of incident. So for instance, Lampasas judge will do one, San Saba judge will do one, Coryell County judge will do one. I suspect, I don't know about Mila may do one. I suspect Bell County would probably want to do one, and I don't know, Hamilton judge said he would, James said he probably would. So point being, if all 7 counties do a disaster declaration, and let's say we go into Martin's area and McLennan County and some of those guys, what that does at the governor's level is he sees all of these counties that are declaring disasters. So automatically, he's now engaged in it because he's seeing disaster declarations. That tells him, I've got to respond. The goal is for us along that path of those 78 counties across the state of Texas, a majority of those will probably do the disaster deck. At the governor's level and Chief Nimkid's level, they'll look at that and go, if these guys are saying based on their planning, which we're doing right now, they've already determined we're going to be inundated. We don't think we'll be able to manage the event, right? Then the governor goes, all right, we'll go ahead and let all the state assets be available to be used. So that tells me at my level, now I can go grab what I need from around the state to support Bell County. I can bring in TIPMIS. I can bring in Texas military department. I can bring in all of the state agencies to help you guys manage your business. If the governor doesn't do a declaration, that means we have to work within the confines of what state resources do I currently have in Bell County. So what TxDOT resources do I have? What highway patrol resources do we have? So forth and so on. That minimizes it quite a bit. So for you guys to do a disaster deck, that sends the message. All right. Does that help?
Yeah.
And really what you're trying to do with the disaster deck is create that window. And we talk about this kind of all the time. Most of the counties look at the Thursday prior to Monday. They look at Thursday being their beginning of the incident, and they go to Tuesday, which is kind of the recovery day after the incident. You guys were talking about people be leaving. So it just doesn't stop at Monday at 11 o'clock. All the mess kind of starts after that going into Tuesday. So that's kind of the event window that most of them are kind of getting to. It would be nice if we had a similar event window for us at the district level, because we're trying to support multiple EOCs and we have to put people in your EOC to help be there and talk to yada yada. So that's a coordination piece that we're talking about. The funding mechanism for Broadwood, I don't think there'll be any funds that are coming out of this because again, it's truly a local event across the state of Texas. And that's the way the governor and MKA have said they look at it at this point. We look at it from public safety and emergency response piece. So we don't care about the events that are going on. We don't care about the money that's being raised. All we care about is continuity of government, and we care about public response and public assistance, right? We want to make sure people can get to a hospital. We want to make sure a fire truck can get to where it needs to, whatever. That's how we look at it. So when we submit our information up the chain, that's how we paint it. This is a public safety, emergency response, protective measures approach, because we want them to provide what we need to help you guys. Okay, that's kind of where we're at right now.
So the only thing I want to add on to what you said is it is a planned event until it's not.
Right.
So more people, more
You
problems.
get hit in the mouth. Right.
Yes, sir. They get punched in the mouth and then they're all good.
And I'll put this in real quick, Mayor, for Jennifer. So when they get to the point in their planning, whether the county puts together a combined plan, which is kind of what you guys have got going on, when you do your disaster declaration, which is pretty simple, it's a sign and date kind of deal. It's the letter to the governor that you get to outline why I'm doing this. And you just touched on it because of these things. Bullet 1, because we're going to be inundated with possibly 50,000 extra vehicles. 2, we don't think we're going to have enough fuel. We need extra. So that's where you kind of define why you're doing this letter to the governor, right? That's the mechanism right there that they look at and go, makes sense to me. Got it. So keep that in mind.
And honestly, what we'll probably do in Bell County is the EMCs will compare notes on what's going in that, so they all say the same thing.
Well, wouldn't it make sense for the path of the eclipse, each of those judges to have some kind of a meeting now with all those judges so that everybody got together and made this declaration so the governor will look at it as a necessity?
And great question. And so history-wise along this schedule, we've been meeting at the county level with the judges and the mayors, kind of like they've been doing in Bell County, in the various areas of law enforcement, fire. And so we've been kind of doing that for the last several months. In some cases, we've been doing it almost a year. But now the schedule is kind of condensing. And we're at the point now, say before the end of December, where we need to have all this in place.
Yes.
And your point being, shouldn't all the judges and the mayors get together and come to agreement? Yes, I think at some point in time at the COG, if Jim Reed or somebody calls that group together and say, this is the plan, this is what we're doing, does everybody support that? Because that goes a long way again in making things work, right? So.
I hope Jim Reed does that.
So you should just say, Jim, do that.
I'm supposed to
Somebody
do
should
that,
just
but
say-
he probably will tell him, David told me to.
No. All right, nobody on the bus.
I don't know what I'm gonna say to him.
It's kind of on the schedule, and we were gonna let Jesse Hennig, the guy there at the COG, he was gonna go and try to get that together, probably early January. But at the county level, these guys, they're doing all the heavy lifting. They have to put it all together for you. And so they're running out of time
And
too.
that COG, Jim's COG, so to speak, would pull all the judges in the path of the eclipse.
Well, it would just be for our district. So just for our COG would be the 7 judges in.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Oh, yes,
And that's the 7 judges or 7 districts that the governor would look at saying, I see this as a
So the
important
path,
request on this because their 7 are together.
the path covers a lot more cogs.
Oh,
than
I
just
know
ours.
that.
Yeah.
And so we would coordinate here with our cog.
Uh-huh.
The cogs may talk, but that gets into higher levels of coordination.
That's their issue.
As far as
Okay.
getting the governor to declare it, pretty much all the cogs up and down the eclipse need to be.
Exactly,
Right.
precisely.
Well, and so that's interesting that you bring that up. So maybe it's not necessarily that every COG has to be on board, but if one COG, 7 judges say, this is how we feel based on our situation, that's enough to gain his attention. So it doesn't have to be a unanimous thing. It's really, again, about painting the picture. It may be South Texas, and I guarantee you right now in the Fredericksburg area, the Llano area, the Marble Falls, those areas where a lot of these big events are going to occur, they are going to be overwhelmed for sure. And those judges are definitely going to want to be in the situation. So we'll have multiple, I think.
Well, theoretically, I-35 is flat going to be overwhelmed at the end.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
With people leaving.
It could be a mess for sure. Whatever it is, but
But we will plan
Do our
to a
best.
point and then respond to.
I like Jennifer's saying, we're going to manage chaos.
We're gonna manage chaos. Actually, when we met with Fran about, do we do an event? Do we do viewing locations? Do we not? We just basically manage the chaos is how I put it. And we have opted to just manage the chaos, basically. We are not hosting any events. We don't have any of our facilities available for rent that weekend. So none of our pavilions or facilities, to make sure our resources are available to respond as necessary.
Yeah,
For
we're-
speaking of that, Mayor asked me if you could kind of talk a little bit about what y'all have been doing locally to help prepare the city of Temple, and y'all have done a lot, so could you share that with council?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've had several meetings. I had mentioned about the meeting, working with the EOC with our neighbors, but here within the city. So we've been working on a communication plan, looking at messaging to our residents, to businesses, and to visitors coming in, and making sure that we're messaging those things out appropriately, because obviously our folks coming in, the visitors coming in, they're not going to know about our Facebook page or website. So we need to make sure we're engaging local media. We're working on a traffic management plan with the police department. We have met with the game wardens and the Corps of Engineer about Temple Lake Park. Kind of looking at that in 2 ways. One is if we get water in the lake and we have people in boats that have rented boats that maybe don't have a lot of experience and may have substances on board and challenges with that. Or if we continue to have low levels, that's more camping space on the shores, and so fires and things like that. So we've talked about how that response will look. Actually need to look into the reservation, no, not reservation, the nature reserve.
Oh, Miller Springs?
Miller Springs Nature Reserve. So apparently that's in our ETJ, and so we have the authority to close it if we so choose. So that's a discussion we'll need to have. Let's
Are
see.
we putting this information available to every hotel and bed and breakfast that we're aware of in the
So
city?
there are not rooms available.
I know that, but the information that will be at those hotels for the guests at that time?
So we have not, communications and marketing has been tasked with that work group of working on the communications plan. And so I'm not sure at this point, I'll get an update from them tomorrow on how best they'll disseminate information.
Yeah. I don't know if there's one.
I know people at Two Bed and Breakfast have contacted me and said, we want brochures
Oh, okay.
from the city. So I guess I should tell Heather.
Okay, yes,
Okay.
yes, that would be
Kind
great.
of that scary movie, The Purge.
Yeah, kind of.
Because they're rented out.
Oh, absolutely.
And so in addition to
For
everything
the
Jennifer
eclipse
talked
here,
about,
I mean,
we're
people that
also, we're all
call for
developing
because of the
staffing
eclipse,
plans
what
for
I'm trying to say.
upstaffing, obviously. And like for us, we're looking at, extra people on Friday, more extra people on Saturday, a few more on Sunday, our maximum on Monday, and then still upstaffed a little on Tuesday. And obviously very flexible because we don't know when it's all gonna start. I kind of envision it like Jennifer described earlier, like the 4th of July event. Everybody's gonna trickle in over the 4 or 5 days. And then we're gonna have the mass exodus at the end after it's over. And so I really think that the Monday, Tuesday are gonna be the big days for us. So I know PD is doing the same thing. They're basically doing an all hands on deck. We're all planning on maybe happen to not be able to use roads and may have to be off-road quite a bit. So, we've got most of our off-road vehicles that are gonna be staffed. PD's getting a lot of extra tires and stuff because of off-road. And so, yeah,
This is a think out of the box.
yeah, and parks and others are gearing up as well because even if we're not renting places, people are going to end up in the parks, and so we're all up staffing and thinking about what we're going to do to possibly host a couple 100,000 people here in the city or whatever.
We've even talked to streets about traffic lights and if we need to make alterations to the lights.
I mean, like, I can see RVs pulling in crossroads. And is there a plan to put a policy in place around, that sort of dry camping kind of stuff?
So we're talking about blocking parking lots. We've met with the chamber on a couple, 3, 4 different levels. We've met with Rotary. We've met with both Rotary clubs and a few others, talking to businesses about their individual decisions. And we're kind of telling everybody, hey, we're going to give you the information. You have to make the decision what you're going to do. We know some restaurants have already said, yeah, we're closing for the whole weekend. We don't want to mess with it. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We know, like all of our distribution centers out here are concerned about people pulling in and using their parking lots or their driveways to park in. And what we told them is, and PD has told them is, look, there's not enough of us to go around to, basically take care of and police all of this. Even if you combine police and fire, there's not enough of us to go around. And so if you want to 100% assure that people are going to stay out of your lot, you need to barricade it and post people there. Otherwise, people will just move barricades or drive around them.
PD will operate on a tiered priority and criminal trespass will be very low on that priority. And so that's what they've been told.
Or illegal parking and stuff.
At the airport, I heard somebody say one time about people were trying to stay at the airport so they can fly out. Follow
We just got an update on that yesterday.
Yeah, I just talked to Sean last night at the grand opening, and the folks that were interested in that have found other locations, and so they are not going to allow it. They're probably going to have people fly in. I don't think they're going to stop that, but they're not going to have the camping and stuff that they were looking at before. So that's
So we think we'll have more people flying in than normal.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's inevitable. So yeah.
What residents have said they're closing,
I don't know the particular names. I've just been told by Rod over the chamber that at least 2 restaurants have said that. Yeah, we're gonna work through Friday evening and then that's it. We're off for the weekend.
On my rental, I tripled the price and required a 3-day minimum stay.
Oh, yeah.
Booked up, no time.
I know a few people that have actually decided to go out of state during this and rent their homes as VRBO. And they're getting $2,000 and $3,000 for the weekend. Exactly. Literally pay for a vacation.
The people that I talked to, all of them are, one's coming from Colorado, one's from California, and one's from Utah. And they, whenever there's an eclipse, a full eclipse of the United States, they go to every one of them. And 2 of them are flying kids in from college.
It's a big deal
Keep
for
our
a lot of
trucks
people.
off the road.
So we know of people for
Yeah.
sure that that we've been communicating to. They're coming from Australia,
Yes.
Germany,
Yeah.
France,
Yeah.
to Central Texas, to come and view the eclipse from, I mean, that's pretty serious,
Yeah.
folks.
Crazy.
But it happens more, this, like, I don't understand.
I agree. I've said to everybody, hey, I'm gonna be here, and so I'm gonna go out and watch it. But would I drive across the country to go see it? No, thank you.
And the EOC will step out, we'll look at it with our glasses, like, oh, that's cool, and then we'll go back.
For the commercial.
And I have talked to some people, we had the annular eclipse, 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
or 3 weeks ago. I talked to some people that were in the path of that, and literally people were pulling over on 37 highway and just parking in the middle of the road.
They just got out and stood there.
And watched it for
Right.
30 minutes or so, and then when it was over, they got back in their vehicle and drove off. So everything we were hearing about it happened during that one, and that was kind of a mild eclipse,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
will. So if you can imagine, this one's a much bigger deal.
I will say I was notified that, Bell County is looking at potentially just, pertinent staff to be on duty that day, so they're not gonna have sports and some of those things to free up resources for other things, so.
I was in the meeting where Chief Reynolds recommended to Dr. Ott to have school.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So as of right now, Colleen is the only district that is closing and the only one that is planning to close. Superintendent,
Or Cavazos.
I can certainly see
but that's not
that.
an ISD. So yes, Fort Cavazos will be essential personnel only. They're gonna use it, I think it's a training day.
Safer for students to be.
To be in the school.
So,
And, one teaching opportunity.
it is a huge, I have a fourth grader, that goes to academy and she is thrilled. Her science teacher has been talking about all the activities they're gonna do and he's getting glasses and she's ecstatic about this and very, almost antsy for April to get here for it. So it's a huge education opportunity.
It really, really is.
So,
The Children's Museum is doing,
Getting us some glasses.
so I'm actually asking Parks and the library tomorrow. They were both looking at ordering some glasses, but I'm ordering some for the EOC. I told you, I said, if we have to work it, we're gonna go outside.
Yeah, let's go to the EOC, we'll get you there.
Justin and I were just talking, is there, like, we both have a lot of trucks on the road, a lot of people still don't pay, is that?
So there are pros and cons. If you're gonna be on the road, expect delays. If you're not gonna be on the road, then that's a day lost.
Both of our businesses, people on the road.
Yeah, plan alternate routes.
wants
So-
an extra
I
gas,
gotta go where the jobs are.
Yeah.
Main arteries are going to be.
and extra gas. I mean,
Yeah.
because the gas stations are expecting to run out.
My trucks, we have a fuel tank that.
Yeah, we have a fuel tank at the yard.
And that's another thing we're looking at is getting some fuel pods in here just for emergency vehicles and city vehicles. Because that is one thing we are worried about is, running out of fuel in the area. And not necessarily because of poor planning. You can fill the tanks up and they can run it out very quickly.
So
So-
if HEB and Walmart distributions are aware and they are planning accordingly for deliveries, there's not any issue with getting deliveries here prior to, it's just the increased population shopping.
Yeah, and I think PFG is planning on having their folks back in early, before the havoc hits it, after. Before the havoc, I've got it muted, it's just, I've got this override on, that's a call going now, so I've got this override on and I always forget about that, so. They're bringing people back in before everything really hits around 3 o'clock with, everybody leaving, so.
You were bringing them back in before the end
Correct,
to
yeah,
stay over the end.
well, to get in before
For their.
all the roads get really cranked back.
Trying to
Correct.
leave, I guess.
Yeah, before the mass exodus.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
will have
yeah, makes sense.
cots, we will have cots
So
at the EOC.
shifting shifts.
Correct.
We will have cots at the EOC, Police Department and Public Works. So we're working on identifying locations that we may have staff stay over. I told my husband, I said, I'll leave Sunday and I'll be back on Tuesday. And he said, are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can get home because I live out the opposite side of town. So if it takes 4 hours to get home, that's not worth it. So we'll be camping out.
Did y'all look at the one the other day that came across at all to see what happened anywhere?
So yes, what she was saying a minute ago, there were people, that stopped their cars, got out and literally just stood there and watched it for 30 minutes, just stopped in the middle of the road.
Yeah, we talked to some folks that were, Corpus Christi was in.
I was there, but I was on my back porch, I couldn't get out.
Yeah, so there were some people that were out on 37 that we talked to, and literally it came to a complete stop.
Mhm.
And people were just out of their cars looking. And that's hard to imagine, but we've heard that from a lot of different folks. And so that's kind of what we're expecting on 35 and 36 and 14. And
But it was a perfect viewing time and day, and that's somewhat unusual. And if that were to occur with this, it won't bring more people here because they're already here,
Yep.
but they'll be even more excited as they're leaving.
Correct. And I think it'll be interesting too, because, I've heard you guys bring up weather. Of course, April's kind of a rainy time
Yes.
usually. If it's
Very.
overcast and rainy, I mean, obviously we're still gonna, it's still gonna be dark out. But how many people will try to bail out and get somewhere where it's not?
Exactly, go early.
We
Yeah.
may have
So
traffic
it
challenges
may get
earlier.
extended. So basically what we're telling everybody is plan to ramp up to Sunday morning and Monday being the big day and then start to ramp down. But we all are aware, we're telling everybody, stay fluid. We may have to do that earlier.
If weather starts coming in.
Yeah.
We are officially opening our EOC as of right now at 6 p.m. Sunday night, and we will keep it open until midnight Monday going into Tuesday. Again, adjusting if necessary. If we see issues cropping up that warrant an EOC activation, then we'll activate earlier.
And probably the thing that scares me the most is if the metro areas, if Dallas and San Antonio area get overcast and we're not, that's the one that scares me because that's going to push all of those people. And we don't have a plan to deal with that.
I'm gonna be sick that day.
Yeah, me too.
No, you're not.
I'll be sick. I'll cover it anyway.
Yeah.
I was locked in my office for COVID, with COVID.
Here and here and clear here.
You just never know.
That's true.
Let's wrap it up. We still have a good bit of stuff to cover.
All right. Thank y'all so much
Thank
for
you,
your
guys.
time. We appreciate it.
Thank y'all for coming.
So much.
All right, guys.
Thanks for lunch.
Thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll see you down the road. Yeah, all right. Mayor, good to meet you, sir. Good to meet you. Thank you, guys.
Good to meet you. Yeah, thank you. Good to meet you. Thanks, Jim.
Your renters, are they from? Can I just tell them where they're coming from?
Yeah. One from Utah, Colorado, and one from California.
And did they know you in advance? Know of you in advance?
Just Airbnb.
That is crazy.
This one property, somebody wanted to look at it, so I relisted it real quick on Airbnb. And sent the lady the link, and I said, let me know as soon as you've looked at it so I can unlist it. And during that time, somebody booked it for $75 a night,
The Shiloh Inn,
$75 a night.
the Shiloh Inn and Colleen booked up. They figured out what was going on. They canceled all the reservations. They increased the rate and booked up again.
Oh my
I
gosh,
wrote
can
her a
you
note
do that?
saying, so lucky.
Apparently,
They did.
Comfort Inn here in Temple, I heard, did the same thing.
Oh my goodness.
Canceling and rebooking.
Booked everything at $100. Canceled everybody, rebooked at $500.
Yeah.
And filled up within, I think it was 8 to 12 hours or something like that. It was a stupid short period of time.
That is really disgusting.
So we're very excited about April Inn.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all. All right, so I will adjourn the workshop and we'll enter into executive session. Where we,
Doing the workshop. They're going into executive session.
oh, I guess that's true. All right, at this time, which is 2:37, we will, 2:32, we will enter into executive session.